Chapter 41. Master of Stealing Home. In the darkness, Su-Chi was pondering everything. Was it merely coincidence? Or was there a connection? The contents of the exclamation seemed quite profound. Could it be that, after winning the so-called game day, he could meet the evil god again? Better not think about that. After all, everyone was internet friends. Meeting offline and dying wouldn't be good. At that moment, a system message appeared in Su-Chi's vision. Main quest released. Survive game day and find the key to the orphanage gate to escape. He squinted his eyes. It was a nightmare-level dungeon, but the main quest didn't require him to win, just to survive. It seemed that tomorrow's game day would be extremely dangerous. In the darkness, Su-Chi asked, "What kind of activities do you have on game day?" These three guys weren't asleep yet. They had just been nearly trembling due to that inspection. Snakeheadman immediately responded hoarsely, "It's different each month, depending on what the three staff members find amusing." There were 3 staff members in total at the orphanage. The cook, the supervisor, and logistics. "They are terrifying," Croc Brother revealed his fear. "If you rank low in the game, you will be killed." Su-Chi asked, "How were you brought here?" This place was called an orphanage, meaning the others here were also just children, young, parentless, abandoned. "Because..." Spider-Boy lifted his pale face, showing a bleak smile. "Outside, we are all monsters. Others are afraid of us, including our parents." "Stop smiling, failed man. It was really scary. Here, we can only struggle to survive like monsters," Snakeheadman said painfully. "The staff enjoy watching us like this." He weakly added, "Me attacking you is just normal for this orphanage. After all, it's survival of the fittest. Just stop trying to justify it. It won't wash clean." Su-Chi rolled his eyes. He withdrew his gaze. "So, it's the same with everyone else. In this enclosed orphanage, everyone was forced to follow the primal rules of nature." Croc Brother nodded with a sense of resignation in his tone. "Yes, but there's no choice. Everyone is just fighting to survive, and those gaps left by the deceased will soon be filled by newcomers." "That reminds me," Snakeheadman's voice faltered, unable to help himself. "You should be careful about the people from Room 1 tomorrow. Don't provoke them." "They are among the earliest at the orphanage, having survived the longest by any means necessary, and they are very close to the 3 staff members, which makes them act without fear." Snakeheadman pointed at Su-Chi's bed. "The last person who lived here was Brother Dog, who angered the people from Room 1 during the last game day, then was retaliated against. Those guys tied him to a street lamp and bit off his limbs. That night, Brother Dog never returned." Croc Brother said softly, his head low, "Actually, I kind of liked him." Su-Chi fell silent. He looked at the tops of the others' heads, where question marks displayed their current thoughts. Submissive, not daring to make waves, from Spider-Boy. Fearful of this life, missing the outside world, from Croc Brother. Revisiting the feeling of recent suffocation, from Snakeheadman. Su-Chi's eyelids twitched. What was up with the last one? "Let's sleep. We need to be fully alert tomorrow," Croc Brother reminded. "It's already past midnight. If we don't sleep now and wake up too late tomorrow, it'll also be counted as a violation." "All right, good night, everyone," Spider-Boy said quietly. But Su-Chi didn't make a sound. As if he were already asleep, the others stopped talking too, and one by one began to close their eyes, preparing to sleep. About half an hour later, Su-Chi slowly opened his eyes, gazing into the black-as-ink night outside. In such a dangerous place, how could one possibly sleep? After some deep thought, completing the main quest seemed not difficult to him, but what he cared about more was the sheep head and the dark red exclamation mark above it. If he wanted to complete it, it might not be so simple. Su-Chi currently only possessed the Night Demon gene as his trump card, and it only activated in the night or in darkness. If he wanted to gather more clues and help, he had to make use of it. Su-Chi watched as the other 3 slightly began to snore, shaking his head. "At this age, you guys can actually sleep." He slowly rose and cautiously pushed open the door, an endless darkness opening like a giant mouth, ready to swallow him whole as he stepped out. Fear, chill, anxiety about the unknown. Sorry. Brother Su was unmoved. He gently closed the door behind him and walked out. His small body walked cautiously in the perilous orphanage, surrounded by darkness, with only the faint glimmer of the streetlights flickering dim yellow. Su Qi continued down the corridor. Besides the night demon bonus, he actually had a special ability, which was enhanced hearing brought by his long ears. He could hear very faint sounds. This was also a skill the instance gave Su Qi to survive. But all these were still far from enough for Su Qi's goals. The night was deep and everything was silent. Su Qi walked down the corridor to room number 1, and he could clearly hear the snoring of people inside, deep in sleep. He then looked towards the end of the corridor. The cafeteria was further away, the office cottage was on the left side of the orphanage's large iron gate, and the storage room was in the corner under the right streetlight. It seemed these 3 staff members were residing here. He hadn't approached yet. His ears suddenly twitched, hearing a burst of talking coming from within the darkness. There's someone outside. Su Qi leaned against an object for cover. He carefully moved closer. In the backyard of the orphanage, 3 figures stood by a campfire, their shadows casting eerie reflections on the wall. Blood. Is there enough? Adding tomorrow's, that should be enough. We've raised them too long. Developed some feelings, What about the old director? After checking the dorms, he should be preparing for tomorrow's arrangements. The old director has longed for this day for too long. After all, he was nearly dead 6 months ago, surviving only by consuming flesh and blood. Finally looking forward to this day. Tomorrow's the last game day. Everyone should enjoy it. Of course. The guy emitting a strange laugh was lifting a jar, pouring a large amount of fresh blood into a well, while the other 2 seemed to be drawing patterns at the edge of the well, conducting some sort of ritual. It looked very likely. Su Qi watched this familiar scene. Sure enough, it related to his good brother, Evil God. This proved one thing. Each instance seemed not to exist independently, whether it be pollutants or the followers of the evil god. Everything was interconnected. Time to sneak around. Su Qi looked towards the 3 houses. With time pressing and tasks critical, he needed to find useful items before these people completed their drawings. Or find an opportunity to take down one. Chapter 42. The game day begins. The next morning, all the inhabitants of the orphanage gathered in the open space. 7 rooms, 4 to a room, a total of 28, a group of oddly shaped boys and girls, each with unique animal features, were emerging from their rooms. Su Qi glanced around subtly, noticing everyone appeared very tense and uneasy. The tall ones from room 1, however, seemed somewhat excited. At that moment, one of the staff members emerged. His body was swollen with obesity, dressed in a blood-stained apron, and his pig-headed face featured 2 outward extending fangs. Pig-Headman's gaze fixated on the others, his voice raspy. It seems you're all afraid. Everyone's body trembled slightly. Su Qi kept his eyes on him. He had seen this entity once last night, but in daylight, it was an entirely different vision. This guy, had he not brushed his teeth? There were remnants of blood and flesh on his teeth. Pig-Headman squinted his eyes. Why be afraid? Game day is a lot of fun. He calmly displayed his fangs and said, I simply don't understand. Can anyone explain? When Pig-Headman's gaze swept over the group, whoever met his eyes quickly lowered their head in fear, avoiding the gaze. He licked his lips, staring at a boy with antlers beside him. You? Can you explain? The antlered boy was trembling all over. He struggled for a while without speaking. Bang! Pig-Headman kicked him away, too slow in responding. And what about you? The Pig-Headman turned his expressionless gaze to the Spider-Man beside him. Spider-Man, despite his frightening appearance, was even more timid, stammering, I don't know. He hadn't even finished speaking. Slap! A smack landed across Spider-Man's face, the force turning his head dizzyingly. But Spider-Boy didn't dare to move, nor did he dare utter a word of complaint. He didn't want to die. After Pig-Head Man finished slapping, he said indifferently, "You really do look dreadfully bleak." "I couldn't help myself." He paused. "You don't have any objections, do you?" Blood rushed to Spider-Boy's pale face as he trembled, shaking his head. "Have you gone mute?" "No objections," Spider-Boy hurriedly replied in fright. The oppressive air around Pig-Head Man made it impossible for anyone to speak against him. His gaze then coldly shifted to survey everyone present. "You lot, a trashy existence, shouldn't have been born into this world. Each one of you a waste. No wonder you're all unwanted orphans. And yet I have to get up early in the morning to make your food." It seemed that Pig-Head Man was venting his irritation at having to wake up, but everyone was accustomed to this routine, all bowing their heads in silence, not daring to speak. He reached out a hand and pulled open the door to the canteen. "Roll in." Everyone scurried in as if granted a pardon. The four from room 1 looked towards Pig-Head Man panderingly as they passed by. "Uncle, it's game day. What have you prepared? Can you give us a hint?" Pig-Head Man looked at the four indifferently. They may have dared to act tough in front of others, but in front of the staff, they were nothing more than slightly older dogs. After receiving that look, the four shivered, quickly ceasing to talk and hastening into the canteen. The so-called canteen. In reality, it was nothing more than 3 tables pushed together to form a long table. Pig-Head Man watched everyone with a dark gaze, his voice hoarse. "Today, it's game day, and I've prepared something fun too." It lifted a piece of cloth from the center of the table, revealing a pot of soup that had been simmering until it turned a reddish-black color, emanating a foul stench. But to Pig-Head Man, it was as if he smelled some kind of culinary delight. He even squinted his eyes, savoring. "This soup is made with many ingredients. It's this old man's painstaking effort, the embodiment of culinary skill. However, many don't appreciate it. Those who don't, guess what becomes of them? Every single one of them turned into soup. Everyone gets to scoop 1 bowl. Let's see who among you can identify the things inside it." He sneered. "The more you say, the better, the more pleased I'll be. Maybe I'll let you off the hook. But if you say too little, then it proves you bunch of losers don't deserve to eat what I've made. Do you understand?" Everyone trembled, half out of fear, and half due to the overpowering foul smell. Su-Chi, standing in the crowd, didn't stand out at all. With his childlike stature, he glanced at the soup and thought it was something not even the darkest anime cuisine could match. If there were special effects, there'd probably be screaming skulls all around the pot. "Come, take a bowl and scoop your soup," Pig-Head Man commanded coldly. Everyone hurried to grab bowls, then rushed to scoop the soup with spoons, one after the other. Watching this scene unfold, Su-Chi couldn't help but reflect. Just look. This is the downfall of a monopolized canteen. Even if the food's as bad as crap, they still rush for it. He didn't need to scramble for his. Snake-Head Man had already scooped a bowl for him. Meanwhile, one fellow was squeezed out by the people from room number 1, trembling as he finally grasped his bowl and quickly picked up the spoon. But in the next moment, Pig-Head Man pressed him down onto the table with a loud bang. His eyes filled with murderous intent. "It looks like you don't like my soup, being the last to come." Then, he dragged him into the kitchen, from where screams could be heard. Su-Chi watched this unfold. It seemed this was the first deadly peril. Knowing he had no real strength, he was simply bottom of the food chain among these people. Had he not prepared in advance, he'd already be declared dead during the rush for the soup. He looked down at the soup in front of him. Hairs, pus, clots of blood, and the like. It even contained excrement. The smell was indescribable, as if he was being pinned down on a toilet, almost suffocating. Honestly, anyone who could take even one sip would surely be considered an earth-shattering figure. The next moment shocked Su-Chi. The people around him clutched their bowls and guzzled non-stop, bodies twitching and even retching, but they kept it down. They were all worthy characters. Su Chi soon realized something. The slower drinkers or those who finished before Pig-Head Man re-emerged were probably facing deadly peril too. Snake-Head Man finished extremely rapidly, his mouth forming a huge circle as he guzzled down the soup. No wonder he had survived, he was ruthless. Su Chi, smiling, patted the very fast Snake-Head Man on the shoulder. "Come on, open your mouth. I'll feed you." Snake-Head Man was stunned. "Bro, not like this." He tried to refuse. "But if you don't drink, you won't guess what's inside." "No worries. I've been known since childhood as the gourmet of Fando District. Just by the smell, I can tell what ingredients are in it. Later, I can tell you a few more." "Really? Just take it as true." Su Chi poured the soup into his mouth, and a few seconds after that, Pig-Head Man, covered in blood, holding a bone-cutting knife, came out. He coldly surveyed everyone and the empty bowls on the table. "Not bad. Looks like everyone's finished. Come." He held the knife and turned into the kitchen, then looked back. "One by one, come in here and tell me. Whoever answers the most, I'll reward." Chapter 43. What a piece of junk. The people around remained motionless, their eyes warily observing each other. Su Chi understood too. If he answered in a way that pleased Pig-Head Man, then he could come out of the kitchen. If not, he wouldn't be able to leave. And right now, no one wanted to be the first. They just wanted to gauge the correctness of others' answers to gather a bit more information. Although answering with the highest number of ingredients would lead to victory in the game, they were simply trying to survive. Inhabitants of each room huddled together, sharing clues with one another. "What do you think is in this bowl?" Spider Boy asked cautiously. Su Chi responded indifferently. "It's shit. What else could it be besides shit?" While many agreed with his statement, no one dared to give such an answer. Croc Brother glanced at the others and whispered, "I tasted a fingernail. It must be from a monkey. I got a mouthful of hair. I can't tell what kind, might be a rat." Snake-Head Man stuttered, "Is it just me? Or does it taste like my mom's cooking?" "Your mom's cooking is this bad?" The group was stunned. "I tasted snake skin." Snake-Head Man was on the verge of tears. This was too hellish. The crowd fell into a somber silence. Su Chi, looking into the distance, said with interest, "Someone's going." Clearly forced, the individual trembled and shuffled their feet. The four from room 1 kicked them. "Hurry up and remember to say the information I gave you." This gang was using them to find their own answers. After a minute inside, screams were heard. Then they gradually faded, and Pig-Head Man announced coldly, "Next." The inhabitants of room 1 sneered, lifting another person. "So ruthless." Croc Brother found it hard to watch. "That's why room 1 has survived so many game days," Snake-Head Man hissed. "They've learned the brutality of the staff and secured their footing in the orphanage." And after another minute, this person actually came out alive. The four from room 1 smiled. They must have had some correct information. Combining that with their own, it was enough. Quickly, another volunteered to walk into the kitchen. Now someone else has moved. Because that one doesn't like the same answers over and over, wanting to hear new ingredients each time. The later it gets, the harder and more dangerous, Snake-Head Man said with a rueful smile. Only the people of room 1 dare to stay till the end because they continuously force the people who come out to tell them information. Su Chi pondered. "Is that so? Well, all right then. The 3 of you follow suit later." "But we still haven't grasped enough information." Croc Brother shook his head. "Cow dung, cockroaches, dead maggots, frog juice, rat urine. These should be enough, oh right?" It also added a big dollop of its own snot. Su Chi muttered to himself. "For real?" The others' faces paled. "Would I lie to you?" "Ugh!" The 3 retched underneath the table. Ignorance is bliss, but once you know, it becomes completely unacceptable. As they saw someone emerge, they clenched their teeth. "We're going too." They were simply trying to survive. Winning the game was not even a consideration. Su Chi stayed in his place and didn't go with the others. He calmly watched the panicked expressions of the people around him, certain that he was going to win this game. And his opponent were those 4 from Room 1, who were right now constantly threatening and then gleaning information. But Su Chi was still not anxious. Time ticked by. Other players kept moving in and out of the kitchen, entering with sweat-drenched brows and leaving like they had shed a layer of water, relieved to have survived. It feels like a student reciting to the teacher in the office. Su Chi could even afford such an association. Soon, the 4 from Room 1 also noticed Su Chi, who had been stationary the whole time, and their eyes narrowed slightly. Soon after, everyone else had taken their turn, leaving only them and Su Chi still unmoving. "Is that the newbie?" The one who seemed to be the leader spoke, a formidable rhino horn protruding from his head, his eyes emitting a cold light. "Just a minor character, let's go first," the other 3 sneered. "There's no surprise who the winners will be this time. It's us again. Once we get the reward, we'll really be able to enjoy the next game." The 3 of them one by one entered the kitchen. Rhino Horn's gaze fixed on Su Chi, but he found that Su Chi was also looking back at him, then displaying an innocuous smile. He actually seemed intrigued as he asked, "What are you waiting for, newbie?" As soon as he spoke, every other gaze immediately turned towards them, all landing on Su Chi. The 3 men with snake heads suddenly tensed up. "Don't provoke them." The snake head man lowered his head, quickly whispering a few words, trying to discourage Su Chi. But Su Chi had already cheerfully replied, "I'm waiting for you to go in." Rhino Horn's gaze narrowed, a sneer appearing on his lips. "Interesting, and follow behind me to become food in the kitchen?" "No." Su Chi remained calm. "I will survive, and I will also win this so-called game." Rhino's gaze sharpened, and he actually stood up, his body pushing the table aside, his expression fierce. "You little squirt, you think you can win? Have the guts to say that again." Everyone else was startled but then showed a faint sympathy. That's how Brother Dog had gone down. This newbie. If he didn't die here, he would somewhere else. "Rhino, calm down." The 3 from Room 1 had emerged, jumping at the sight. No fighting in the dining hall, and at this moment, the commotion outside had caught the attention of the pig head man in the kitchen, who pulled back the curtain with a cold look in his eyes. "What are you standing up for? Looking to die?" Rhino slumped back into his seat, not daring to utter a sound, but his eyes remained fixed on Su Chi. Pig Headman's gaze shifted between Rhino and Su Chi, eyes slightly squinting, not moving towards the kitchen, his voice hoarse. "Looks like it's just the 2 of you left. Let's just get it over with, right here." He idled his bone-cutting knife, revealing a cruel smile. "Of course, whoever speaks last must mention 3 new ingredients. If they fail, the outcome went without saying." Rhino, not expecting any surprises, still hastened to respond, his voice hoarse as he divulged all the information he had gathered, a comprehensive list, over 20 ingredients. He even added a sycophantic comment at the end. "This is the richest, most delicious soup I've tasted." Pig Headman, however, did not show pleasure at his words, his gaze remaining flat as he looked at Su Chi. "He's almost finished listing the ingredients. There's only 2 left, kid. Even if you say them, it seems you've lost." Su Chi looked at Pig Headman's bone-cutting knife, glinting sharply. "Can I say a few last words, then?" Pig Headman didn't respond, seemingly allowing it out of interest. "I just want to say." Su Chi paused, stunningly asserting, "This is the worst, most disgusting mess of ingredients I've ever seen. No one would eat this. It's utterly inedible. This is eating shit. No, this is even worse than shit." Chapter 44. Collecting the reward and by the way. His statement instantly plunged the entire cafeteria into silence. Everyone displayed looks of disbelief, their courage shaken. Even Rhino, that fierce fellow, couldn't help but be shocked. What was this guy talking about? Though everyone agreed with what he was saying, daring to speak openly in front of this person. He was truly one of a kind. Man, you really are my brother. Snakehead Man and his friends were on the verge of exploding. We told you not to provoke the person from room number 1, and you went straight to pulling in the boss. Pighead Man displayed a clearly surging murderous intent, ready to walk over and drag him into the kitchen to be gutted and strung up. Yet Su-Chi was looking at the remaining soup in the bowl. It's just a pity, ruining such a good soup base. Pighead Man's eyes slightly sharpened. What are you talking about? A truly good chef's soup does not rely on the ingredients, but the soup base. They only know the taste of what's in their mouth, but remain ignorant of the secret in the soup. Su-Chi's expression was quite serious at this moment, because he was not joking. This Pighead Man's culinary skills were really good. Goji berries, Cotinopsis soaked in water, then using boiled chicken fat to flavor, and carefully sequenced smashed chicken, duck, and fish, mixing with bonito flakes, dried scallops, and aged wine and simmered for nearly 5 hours. Su-Chi sighed. It's just a pity it all went to waste on this garbage food. After he finished speaking, the cafeteria once again fell into silence. The crowd looked somewhat dazed. That stuff he just mentioned, did it really exist? You've got to be kidding. Was that disgustingly foul soup worthy of such an excellent soup base? Isn't this like trying to find gold in dung? Rhino looked at Pighead Man standing silently. Thinking it was too angry to speak, it turned its head and growled. What nonsense are you spouting about goji berries and Cotinopsis? All that stuff you mentioned is trash, spoiling this delicious soup. Take a look. Some people get so used to eating crap, they start to think all crap tastes delicious. Rhino wanted to say something more. Slap! A bone-cutting knife was suddenly held against its neck, scraping out a blood mark, and Pighead Man's hoarse voice rang out. Do you really think the soup tastes good? Rhino trembled all over, displaying a nervous smile. Of course! Well, that whole bucket is yours then. Pighead Man pointed at the leftover soup. If you can't finish it, you know what will happen. Rhino's face went pale, but he had no choice but to comply, showing a reluctant smile, then took a deep breath fervently and walked over. Meanwhile, Pighead Man's gaze slowly moved to Su-Chi, calmly saying, I have been here for many years, cooking every day for this bunch of idiots, and you are the first one to discern the secret of my soup base. No, you flatter me. I didn't even taste it, I figured it out by looking. Pighead Man sneered. These idiots don't understand at all, so they only deserve to eat this rubbish. I also enjoy seeing them eat crap but praise it as if it's delicious. Well, you know that stuff isn't so different from crap. The most important thing in the soup is the ingredients? Nonsense. It's the soup base. Pighead Man looked at Su-Chi, squinting his round pig eyes. You, kid, are very good. Excellent. I have decided. You are the winner of this game. He turned and pushed back the curtain, walking in. Follow me to the kitchen. I'll give you your reward. Su-Chi also headed towards the kitchen, passing by Rhino who was drinking the soup and glaring fiercely at him. Stop looking at me. I'm not going to compete with you. Su-Chi entered the kitchen. Actually, this kitchen's horror factor was less than Tentacle Man's apartment. The horror there was a direct assault on your sanity. Now, it was just plain bloody imagery. Pighead Man walked to a cupboard, speaking in a hoarse voice, as the first one to taste out the secret of the soup base. So, Pighead Man opened the cupboard door. Inside was a jar. Upon opening it, there were no disgusting ingredients inside. Instead, he took out a pudding, then sprinkled it with a thick sauce. Try my real skills. Su-Chi looked over but did not refuse as the sauce was just the jam he made. And his panel also appeared in his view. Name: Pig Chef's carefully crafted snack. Function 1. After eating, your level restores to level 5. Function 2. You can choose to unlock an item or skill. Function 3. During this instance, your physical strength will not decrease. You'll be immune to poison damage. Note: worry not. Everything inside is proper. I'd only make this for one person. That's the old director. Pighead Man sneered. Without my skills, the old director would have likely. He suddenly stopped, not continuing further. Su Chi took it without changing his expression, feeling slightly relieved inside. He finally had some real power and new trump cards. But it was still not over. Pig Headman said, "If it were those guys before, I'd just randomly give them some trash to deal with it. But today I'm happy. I'll make an exception for you." He reached out his hand, groping deep in the cupboard, rustling for a while, then took out a small box. He opened the box. Inside was a wind-up toy, now fully wound, but held back by a button. Name: Return Spring. Quality: perfect. Type: instance tool. Function: you will gain 5 minutes of bullet time, which starts when you hold down the button and pauses when you let go. Can it be taken out of the instance? No. Note: 5 minutes. Once it's used up, that's it. Su Chi was inwardly overjoyed. No guns, no cannons, the enemy makes them for us. Of course, Pig Headman said with a hint of chill in his tone. You'll have to give it back to me once it's used up. Su Chi nodded. Okay. He had a momentary impulse to unlock Thunderbolt and take out Pig Headman right then and there. But he changed his mind. This Pig Headman was probably the strongest of the three, not to be underestimated, and with the unfathomable old director still around, starting trouble now would complicate matters later. All right, little guy. It's time for you to head to the next game venue. Understood. Watching Su Chi and the others leave, Pig Headman withdrew his gaze, looked coldly at the bloody mess in the kitchen, and then loaded the cans onto a trolley before heading in the direction of the old director. The group soon arrived at what was called the next game venue. It was the warehouse room, where the windows were sealed and paper notes with crooked writing were hung. No noise allowed. Snake Headman quickly whispered a reminder to Su Chi in an extremely low voice. This warehouse manager isn't as powerful as the last one, but he has a terrible temper and horrifying methods. He has excellent hearing, yet he likes to sleep, and if someone makes even a slightly loud noise after entering, he would unconsciously kill in his sleep, he added. Which is why this place has the highest death rate. Su Chi looked around. Everyone appeared even more terrified than when they met Pig Headman, including Rhino, who now dared not speak loudly. After all, this opponent was not as reasonable as Pig Headman. Su Chi gave an okay gesture. Everyone then entered the warehouse. The warehouse was large and messy, with a personal room for the warehouse manager beyond the main area. Paper notes were plastered everywhere, seemingly organizing a workflow. In short, 3 tasks: fix things, clean up trash, and organize items, simple but no noise allowed whatsoever. At that moment, Snake Headman suddenly turned pale and shakily pointed toward the manager's room door. Following his fingers, they saw a note posted outside the room. It read, "Cleaning of this area is assigned to everyone in room 7. Some showed sympathy, others a bit of mockery." Rhino's nostrils flared as he smirked sinisterly, staring hard at the group. Snake Headman and the others started trembling again, wanting to say something, but fearing even to make a sound. He quickly looked to Su Chi, but Su Chi had boldly picked up a broom and walked over. He turned the doorknob and pushed the door open. "Hey, are you that brave?" Snake Headman and the others stared at each other with wide eyes, hesitated for over 10 seconds before gritting their teeth and following him in. There was no choice, as it called for everyone in room 7. They tried their best to hold their breaths and keep their heads low, terrified that their own breathing would disturb the terrifying presence. And upon entering, they smelled a stench of blood in the dim room. Their minds were gripped with fear. Could it be? Su Chi was already dead after walking in, but when they looked up they found, under the dim light, Su Chi sat unharmed on the chair that originally belonged to the warehouse manager, playing with a Rubik's Cube on the table as if he owned the room. They trembled all over, almost turning around to flee. They couldn't imagine how furious the warehouse manager would be if he awoke and saw this scene, right? Where was the manager? With fearful and puzzled glances around, their expressions suddenly froze. The warehouse manager, covered in thorns, was inexplicably impaled by a long iron spike, stuck to the wall. Close the door. Suchi's calm voice made their bodies stiffen. Snakehead Man might have been used to handling big situations, but he trembled as he reached out and firmly closed the door. Completely shut. What on earth was going on? Was it suicide? Or internal strife among the staff? Or was it? Snakehead Man looked fearfully at Suchi, and Suchi, seemingly aware of their thoughts, shook his head. Don't think too much. He paused, and in the dim light, his smile showed a faint and mysterious change. I did it. Chapter 45. Who agrees, who disagrees? The three of them fell into a deadly silence. They stared blankly at the warehouse manager, then at Suchi, who had an innocent smile on her face. For a moment, they didn't know who was more terrifying. I know you're shocked right now, and you have many questions, Suchi said, her smile fading as she looked at them. But that's not important. Now, I'll give you a minute to think. Think about what? What do you think? Suchi glanced towards the wall. Croc Brother and Spider Boy were somewhat confused, but Snakehead Man seemed to have realized something. His pupils shrank, and he looked frightened, disbelieving, yet excited. Could it be? Suchi did not hurry them but continued to play with the Rubik's Cube, filling the room with its twisting creaks. Last night, Suchi had chosen to sneak into the warehouse manager's room, where she did something extremely bold and dangerous. She ambushed him inside the room. At great risk, she killed the warehouse manager. And today, all the notes people saw were also written by Suchi herself, including the cleaning task on the door. Without hesitation, Snakehead Man heavily slapped the table. Leader, whatever you're planning, I'm with you. So it's about escaping the orphanage. Even if it's fraught with hardships, even if it leads to death upon capture, I'm in. Indeed, those who showed their loyalty the fastest could at least vie for the position of a leader. I'm in too. I can't stay here any longer. Even if it means dying, I'd rather die outside. Spider Boy spoke up quietly, his resolve stronger than before, probably inspired by Pig Headman's slap. Croc Brother pondered deeply, his gaze gradually becoming firm, gritting his teeth. Let's take the plunge in this orphanage. We live like bugs, constantly in danger of death. Croc Brother gritted his teeth. Since that's the case, let's escape together. Seeing the firm look and excited atmosphere of the three, Suchi silently put down the Rubik's Cube, her expression somewhat odd. Wait a second. When did I say anything about escaping? The three of them were stunned. Didn't you kill the warehouse manager, and since the matter will definitely be exposed, shouldn't we escape before the others react? First, Suchi pointed to the corpse of the warehouse manager, correcting, this isn't about fear of crime. It's about dispensing justice. Second, Suchi said calmly, we're not planning to run. The three exchanged glances. Then what are we supposed to do? Of course it's. Suchi said calmly, kill the remaining three. Why haven't those guys come out yet? Rhino looked towards the warehouse manager's room with a puzzled look, of course. He dared not go forward to open the door. But it had already been an hour, and everyone else had almost completed their tasks, during which a faint noise had scared them half to death, but no spikes had been seen shooting through the iron walls from the room. What exactly happened? At least there should have been some noise if those guys had died. Click! Just then, the door was finally opened and out came Spider Boy. With its numerous spider legs, it dragged something, looking determinedly at everyone as it walked out. Everyone's gaze was fixed on it. Rhino squinted his eyes, wondering what the kid was up to. Everyone. Spider Boy actually began to speak. Everyone's faces drastically changed, immediately showing fear, and they quickly cowered and covered their heads. The warehouse manager's spikes could hunt by sound, and it's very easy to be accidentally killed. But there was no apparent motivation or intent to kill. Spider Boy remained unharmed and resolute. I want to show you all something. Row after row of spider legs unfurled, and it opened several pieces of white paper, all bearing different fonts, even photographs. Everyone stared blankly at the items. Those were the records of every game day, the photographs seemingly depicting something fun, capturing numerous grisly scenes. Everyone felt chilled to the bone, yet still dared not speak. These are the blood-soaked days of the orphanage, and in their eyes, we are just the next batch of insects to be ruthlessly slaughtered, Spider Boy said somberly. Every game day, they treat us as toys to vent their desire to kill. Do you all really want to keep living like this? Rhino squinted his eyes and kept quiet, pondering why the warehouse manager had not taken action after hearing the noise. Could he not be here? At that moment, someone seemed to realize this too and whispered lowly, "But we have no way out." "There is a way. As long as we unite, we can escape from this orphanage," Spider Boy said with a deep voice. His words immediately changed everyone's expressions. What is he saying? Let us unite and escape. Impossible! Someone stepped back a few steps, shivering. It's not possible. We can't escape. Eyes deep with fear, the crowd responded. It's not like no one has ever tried, and you can imagine what happened to those who did. No one has ever escaped. Who would be crazy enough to join you in this? Facing the rising noise among the people, Spider Boy displayed an anxious expression. Don't be like this. If we all come together, there is still a chance. Rhino also understood everything by now. Squinting his eyes, he thought, it looks like the manager really isn't here. This is my chance to show them. With a cunning look and a loud voice, he said, You in room 7, taking advantage of that adult's absence, planning these things, you are audacious. Wait till I get out of here. I'll tell the adults and you all will be dead. He then turned his gaze back to the crowd. And you idiots! Rhino sneered, daring to echo this guy. You are accomplices. The people's faces turned pale. No, we didn't. Who knows? Rhino's hoarse voice threatened. Once I report to those above, do you think you can escape? The crowd shivered all over. But you still have a chance. Suddenly pointing at Spider Boy, Rhino spoke playfully. If you pull out all his legs and nail those few people in the room to the floor, I might speak less to the warehouse manager afterward. Hearing Rhino's words, everyone looked at each other, seeing the hesitation in each other's eyes. Someone had already clenched their teeth and moved. A disappointed look appeared in Spider Boy's eyes. See, I told you it would be useless. You had to try anyway. Snake Headman also stepped forward. Croc Brother appeared at the door. If we could unite, there wouldn't be so much killing. You bunch of fools. Rhino spoke coldly. It seems I have to kill you here. The manager would surely be pleased to see this. Is that so? Too bad. He will no longer see it. A slow voice sounded. Shoo! A spike, glowing cold and bloodstained, shot out from the door, piercing straight through Rhino's chest. He didn't even have time to react before he fell painfully to the ground. You are like a scattered plate of sand. Only strength and iron-bloodedness can make you fear and obey, having lost the instinct to resist. No wonder they call you trash. Suchi's figure slowly pushed the door open, and he was dragging a body, throwing it in the middle of the warehouse. Everyone's gaze was stunned. This. Isn't that the manager? They looked terrified at the body and then at Suchi. Phew! Suchi was pulling out the spike embedded in Rhino's body, blood gushing out, and Rhino's screams echoed in everyone's ears. But Suchi was unmoved, his gaze fixing on everyone. And from now on, I want you to join me in overthrowing the powers of the orphanage. Remember, this is not a request, but an order. Those who obey stay, those who fear kill. His calm voice made everyone shiver. Who agrees? Who opposes? Chapter 46. Confused Supervisor. Brutal beating. Scorpion Supervisor was lounging, his legs propped up as he sat on the office chair. Behind him, his deep green tail swished and swayed. At that moment, His mood was excellent because the long-awaited game day was about to arrive. He was different from the other two. His favorite thing was to torment those useless beings. What meaning was there in killing them all at once? The most fun thing was to use the potent poison on his tail, letting the opponent struggle continuously, screaming in agony as patches of skin erupted like slashed wounds, and then let them die over the course of an hour or two. That was when he felt most delighted. It's about time for them to reach me, he thought. He raised an eyebrow. Game day was actually a torture game among the three of them. Each person had a rule. They could not exceed 4 hours, and the order was determined by a draw. He was somewhat annoyed now, because the time was nearing evening and was about to exceed the stipulation. Don't let the old man kill them all. Damn it! I had some fun stuff prepared. His game was simple too. It was about huddling into groups. He would just throw out a number, and those people would group accordingly. Anyone extra would get his tail injecting poison directly. If the number in the group was incorrect, he would let these people fight amongst themselves, kicking one out, and then have the group torture and kill that individual. He could already imagine the kicked-out fellow. How desperate the expression would be. Fun. It's really too much fun. Scorpion Supervisor looked toward the door. Having heard a dense shuffle of footsteps, his pupils gleamed. Tsk, tsk, tsk. They're finally here. He stood up from his chair, glanced at the pale yellow twilight outside the window. You really made me wait. It won't be fun. Starting with the last fellow to step in will suffice. He walked out of his bedroom and saw a crowd entering the hall. He suddenly felt something odd. Everyone's footsteps seemed heavy as they entered, but their eyes did not hold the usual fear. Instead, there was a sort of resolute acceptance of death. His eyes narrowed, letting out a maniacal laugh. Seems like you've changed a bit? The crowd tensed momentarily. Scorpion Supervisor stroked his chin. It seems they were too gentle. Not many of you died. It doesn't matter. I'll make you little guys remember what fear is. He looked toward the door. First, let's see who the unlucky fellow is. He saw the last person to come in was a little boy with rabbit ears.
Tsk, tsk, tsk. So young, ikinta fel sorry.
He said so, but his tail had already moved first, showcasing a cruel smile. But who let him be so unlucky? Whoosh! Scorpion Supervisor's tail launched a needle, coated with a deadly poison, at an incredibly fast speed. Su-Chi hadn't expected this sudden move. A sneak attack? That was a bit unsportsmanlike. Su-Chi didn't retaliate immediately because he knew that Scorpion Supervisor never used fatal blows straight away. He only liked to poison. But having eaten Pig Headman's snack, he was now immune. However, Su-Chi didn't plan on getting hit either. He instantly activated bullet time, his figure flickering slightly as he dodged the attack. He dodged it. Kid, you're quick on your feet. Unlike the others, Scorpion Supervisor became even more excited. He enjoyed prey that fought back, as it made the torment more interesting. Thanks. I've trained at Shaolin Temple since I was young. Scorpion Supervisor didn't understand, but Su-Chi's fearless voice excited him even more. Interesting, come on. If you little guy can dodge 10 times, I will let you go. Shall I give it a try? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Scorpion Supervisor's tail needles shot out continually at high speed, faster than before, almost like arrows, and Su-Chi decisively continued with bullet time. In his vision, everything slowed down, even the spikes. He didn't need to consume any physical strength to move, and though his speed didn't surpass the limit by too much, it was enough. Su-Chi wondered if he should send a brocade banner to Pig Headman. If it weren't for Brother Pig's gift, it really would have been tricky. As Su-Chi dodged, his gaze remained fixed on the opponent's scorpion tail, its most lethal weapon. To beat this guy, he would have to deal with that tail first. Approaching rashly wasn't a good move. Others watched Su-Chi nervously, fearing he would be pinned to the ground in the next second. At that moment, truth be told, everyone, forced into a corner, felt a mix of resistance and hope deep within. When the Scorpion Supervisor saw his attacks miss several times, his brows furrowed slightly, and he stopped, squinting at Su-Chi. This guy is pretty fast. Su Chi paused briefly, looking strangely at it. Tired. Very well. In that case. It laughed coldly, abandoning the spikes and directly attacking with the scorpion tail, lashing at Su Chi with even greater speed. Boom! Su Chi leaped aside swiftly. The ground beneath him was blasted open, leaving a cracked pit. His gaze was calm. This was his purpose. As soon as the opponent started moving the scorpion tail, his chance had come. Boom! Another precise strike of the scorpion tail. It left a big hole in the wall too. Damn! The scorpion supervisor was getting annoyed. His patience was wearing thin after several unsuccessful attempts. It growled lowly. The scorpion tail suddenly stretched longer, the segments clattering as they tensed to the extreme, then swept across. Next, let's see how you dodge, little guy. But Su Chi's eyes brightened even more. Good fellow. Finally, my chance. He sharply dodged sideways, avoiding the first blow, then grabbed the front end of the scorpion tail. Then, the scorpion supervisor began to sneer. Tisk, TSK, TSK. Bet you didn't expect this. The tip of my tail is also highly poisonous. You, my friend, are dead. Su Chi watched in horror as venom flowed from the tip, contacting his skin, and then cried out in pain. Ha ha ha. Next, every inch of your flesh will shatter like ants under the venom. Feel the excruciating pain. The scorpion supervisor's lips curled up, watching Su Chi, not wanting to miss a second of his agony. But a few moments passed. Su Chi showed no signs of poisoning at all. Instead, while crying out in pain, the strength with which he clung to the tail grew stronger, far surpassing the strength of an ordinary person. The scorpion supervisor's brow furrowed slightly. Could it be the poison didn't contact properly? No, what was he crying out for then? And the next moment. Attack! Croc Brother and Snake Headman pulled out long knives from their pants and struck the scorpion supervisor's tail faster than lightning. The scorpion supervisor, taken aback and about to withdraw, found Su Chi unleashing even greater strength. Not only that, the others also rushed in, pinning down the middle section of the tail. Quick! Chop off that segment. The scorpion supervisor roared in fury. What are you doing? Seeking death. And the next moment, both men chopped down with all their might. Snap! The toxic section of the tail was severed. The cry turned from Su Chi to the scorpion supervisor, its eyes bloodshot, head shooting up, but it saw. Su Chi, holding the venomous section of the scorpion tail, was looking at it, completely unharmed. Why aren't you poisoned? The scorpion supervisor gasped. Su Chi's gaze was teasing. Haven't I mentioned? I trained at Shaolin Temple. And he looked around. Everyone was pulling out an assortment of sticks, iron hooks, and spikes from their clothing, from their pants, from their backsides, from their overalls. Then they all roared and charged at it. He spread his hands and said, Bet you didn't expect this. Chapter 47. Is this a miracle? The doors and windows of the office hut were tightly closed, not allowing the slightest sound to escape. The desk that had once belonged to the scorpion supervisor had now become Su Chi's place. Su Chi sat in his chair, twisting the Rubik's Cube in his hands. Brother Su, tea for you. A person with a cat's head and tail excitedly brought over a cup of hot tea. Where did this come from? Su Chi looked at the tea leaves in his cup. From that guy's storage locker. It hummed. Now everyone is turning the tables and torturing him to vent the humiliation they suffered. It seemed that once the scorpion supervisor lost his intimidating presence, everyone else's courage had greatly increased. Then why didn't you go? It said with shame. There were too many people, I couldn't squeeze in. However, it solemnly said, we all understand that all of this is thanks to you, Brother Su. Everyone has seen hope, and no matter what happens next, we will not back down. We will follow Brother Su's commands in everything. Su Chi glanced at it. It seems you're the spokesperson for them now. What's your name? My parents liked eating pomelos, so my name is Pomelo Cat. Su Chi felt it sounded familiar. He paused. All right then. Go tell everyone to leave him with a breath. Don't kill him. And prepare yourselves. Once it gets dark, we'll commence the operation. Understood. Listening to the Scorpion supervisor's pitiful pleas for mercy from the hall, Su Chi began to contemplate the pre-battle deployment. The situation had become very clear now. Just two enemies. One elite boss pigman and one big boss sheephead Dean. The former was tough-skinned, but not that difficult. The latter, however, was key, for Su Chi didn't know what sort of strength the opponent possessed. On his own side, aside from the assortment of miscellaneous soldiers in this room, the main attacker was still Su Chi himself. His combat power also had some guarantees now. First, his level had been restored to level 5, plus the night had come, augmented by the night demon gene. He now possessed a strength and movement technique of double 40. Currently, he had the return spring bestowed by the pigman, and he had unlocked the skill Thunderbolt, which was his most powerful move thus far, naturally becoming his trump card. The two could also be used in combination. The rest was the toxic scorpion tail, and the Rubik's Cube he was twisting in his hands. Su Chi looked at the Rubik's Cube in his hand. This was the second exclamation mark he encountered in this instance. The information was also simple. Return the scrambled Rubik's Cube to order 50 times. Current progress 47/50ths. Each time an exclamation mark appeared, it would either relate to a hidden plot or yield a special item. And it often involved some, well, behaviors that didn't match the theme. Just 2 more times left. Su Chi watched the Rubik's Cube that had just been solved, only to be scrambled again the next moment, and then his fingers deftly made their turns. He knew a lot of things, and the Rubik's Cube happened to be part of his expertise. The last time. Progress reached 50. As this message appeared, Su Chi noticed that the Rubik's Cube seemed to have absorbed a hint of strength and presence from thin air, transforming into something different, much like the situation with the previously encountered 100-man slaughter blade. Immediately after, it transformed into a sphere of light and merged into Su Chi's body. Click! The door opened in response. This scene was simultaneously witnessed by the Snakehead Man, Croc Brother, and Spider Boy who had just entered the room. They stood there, stunned, watching the sphere of light merge into Su Chi's body. All three actually kneeled down, prostrating themselves excitedly. Is this a miracle? Su Chi fell somewhat silent too. Miracle? I'm just absorbing a skill. But after thinking for a moment, he spoke slowly. It seems that you've seen it too. Well then. He paused, his tone mysteriously ethereal. Actually, I'm not from this world. I hail from a secretive organization, the Hustlers. Their pupils constricted, murmuring, "The Hustlers." Su Chi, without a flushed face or skipping heart, said, "It is a mysterious power that exists across countless worlds, an organization of order that stands for, well, fairness and justice." He looked at his title that wasn't showing. "And I am the sect hierarch." The others widened their eyes, shaking, kneeling with even more vigor. "Can we join too?" Su Chi shook his head. "No, you're not qualified yet." A few people showed extremely disappointed expressions. "Then how can we get the qualifications to enter?" "This, at least you must reach a certain level first. I still need to make up this part of the content." Before he could finish, Snakehead Man suddenly clenched his fist tightly and looked up. "I understand now." Su Chi was shocked. "What do you understand?" "To become part of the Hustlers, you'd at least have to be a notable figure, right?" "That's possible." Su Chi snapped his fingers. Snakehead Man looked at Su Chi with admiration and said firmly, "I'll strive towards this goal." Su Chi remained silent and then slowly spoke. "It's up to your determination from now on." "Yes." After the few excitedly left, Su Chi silently opened the panel. Name: Rubik's Cube. Type: Skill. Quality: Perfect. Function: once activated, it can drag any enemy into the Magic Cube domain. Others cannot enter or attack. The domain lasts for 5 minutes, and it can't be used consecutively on the same person. Note: the domain blocks external attacks and will break open once it exceeds its limit value. Consumption: 500 physical strength values. Note: true men start a duel with a 1v1. Su Chi furrowed his brows. It seems pretty powerful, but also kind of average. The power lies in being able to specify who to drag in, but the averageness lies in still having to deal with them myself. Let's keep it for now. Su Chi closed the panel, his gaze turning to the outside. At this moment, twilight had already faded away, and the last few rays of light were swallowed by the night. His eyes emitted a faint red glow. The night demon Jean had returned. It's time to gather for the group fight. Su Chi pushed open the door and saw that everyone in the hall had already hung up the Scorpion Supervisor. It was in a pitiful state. There was scarcely a piece of flesh on its body that was intact, weak and powerless, like a defeated wild dog, but it still had a lucid consciousness. And Su Chi approached. Everyone quickly made way for him. The Scorpion Supervisor struggled to lift its eyes and stare at Su Chi, its limbs impaled by spikes, its tail also skewered to the floor by several iron hooks as thick as arms, unable to move, bleeding incessantly. Su Chi said, "Look, a sting shot out too sharply will one day spin back and pierce oneself." Hey hey hey. The Scorpion Supervisor actually laughed, his voice hoarse. "Indeed, but I did not expect that you fools would unite one day. This only shows your lack of imagination." It stared at Su Chi with a strange smile. "Do you think you can escape? I can only say, it's useless. In the end, you'll all fall into despair." Su Chi didn't expect this guy to be surprisingly tough, even while being torturously retaliated against by the crowd. His mouth was still incredibly defiant. At that moment, someone suddenly noticed the Scorpion Supervisor's tail moving, managing to break free of the thick iron and starting to whip around. They cried out in alarm, "Be careful!" Su Chi held the return spring, but did not activate it. Because at the next moment, thud! The Scorpion Supervisor actually stabbed its own heart ferociously with the iron stinger on its tail. Its grim and sharp voice rose in everyone's ears. "You have no idea of the secret of this orphanage, nor do you know what we are truly preparing for. The real hell is about to emerge, and I will sacrifice everything for the true God, and none of you will escape." Its voice, full of hate and coldness, made everyone shiver. Su Chi looked at its gradually drooping head, now devoid of the signs of life. He sighed. It seems old acquaintances are truly going to reunite now. Chapter 48. Burst. Sheephead Dean and Pighead Man were standing in a desolate room. The entire floor was covered with a large number of patterns. "The blood from the well is enough now," Pighead Man said in a muffled voice in front of the other, surprisingly tinged with a hint of fear. "According to the ancient tome, the ritual should take place tonight." The Dean's voice was ancient. "What about those two?" Pighead Man shivered slightly, his eyes shifting as he looked toward the closed door. "I don't know. The game should be almost up." He couldn't help but curse. Those fools better not have gotten so carried away that they forgot how important today is. Dean's eyes lifted slightly, pupils filled with a motionless murk and dead silence. His voice, hoarse like insects gnawing at tree roots. "Go check." "Yes." With his tall, rugged body, Pighead Man dragged his heavy steps outside. He had just pushed open the door. His brows suddenly furrowed as he saw a pair of rabbit ears and a figure much shorter than himself standing at the door. "It's you." Pighead Man's brows furrowed deeply. "Why are you here? Wasn't this guy supposed to be in the office? And why do I see only him and not the Scorpion?" Su Chi fluttered his innocent eyes. "It's like this. I heard that if someone wins first place in all 3 games on game day, the Dean gives a reward personally." Pighead Man squinted his eyes, his voice raspy. "Did you win the other 2 events as well?" "Barely made it. Killed them, that counts as a win, right?" Pighead Man exhaled roughly from his nostrils. "Right. It's not hard to win with the thing I gave you. So, can I go in?" Su Chi looked into the darkness. You cannot. Pig-head man blocked his view, his expression gradually turning cold. What about my reward? You seem to have misunderstood something. Su Chi's eyes narrowed sharply as Pig-head man reached out his hand, but he didn't resist immediately. Pig-head man grabbed Su Chi by the neck, his eyes fierce. Only what we choose to give you can be called a reward, and you fools aren't entitled to demand it. Understand? Su Chi seemed to be choked, struggling to speak in intermittent, labored breaths. I thought, at least, you were different from the others, with some kindness. Pig-head man squinted his eyes and let out a few raspy laughs. Kid, you're thinking too much. Kindness is something I absolutely do not have. Moreover, the darkness made Pig-head man's face even more gruesome and terrifying. Tonight is the last day of the game day, and everyone must die. It's just that since you appreciated my cooking, I gave you a chance to live a little longer. But by then, Su Chi could no longer speak, seemingly suffocated, his hands slowly dropping. He squinted his eyes and then reached toward the bulging pocket of Su Chi, ready to take back his belongings. But as soon as he touched it, he felt his fingers pricked by something. Pig-head man's fingers instantly felt numb. What was that? At the same time, Su Chi's previously drooping hands, unbeknownst to Wen, had drawn out 2 spikes, stabbing fiercely and precisely from below right into Pig-head man's crotch. The terrifying penetration pain. Instantly, Pig-head man's eyes filled with blood as he let out a thunderous, agonizing scream. Ah! In pain, he flung Su Chi away. Su Chi let go of the spikes, flew through the air, and landed 10 meters away, stabilizing his stance and looking at Pig-head man. Such tremendous strength, but luckily, I don't play fair. But that wasn't the end. Others who had been lurking around pounced, using the old method to pull out sharp weapons and directly stab Pig-head man. Thud. SSSD. Various sharp cold blades entered the thick fat. But then they could go no further. Everyone's expression changed. And Pig-head man, finally recovering from the pain, roared, sweeping broadly with a massive grip and a burst of brute strength. Everyone holding a weapon was stunned into dropping it by the immense force. You're courting death. Pig-head man's eyes blazing red. He pulled a sharp iron rod from his body and then swept it across with great force and weight. Close by, everyone was swept away. Watching this scene, Su Chi couldn't help but think, a modern-day warrior. However, this was still part of the plan. He hadn't expected those people to actually kill Pig-head man, just to complete their mission. At that moment, Pig-head man's face suddenly turned pale, his legs giving out, and he knelt on the ground, its pupils constricted. Is this poison? It quickly realized that the poison came from all the weapons just now, and the only possible source could be that scorpion. That meant Pig-head man's face had already turned cold, an eerie murderous intent emerging in his gaze. You really want to die? I've heard such talk. Us orphans have endured long enough. Now death or a great plan, both lead to death. Waiting for death. Can we perish as a nation? Pig-head man couldn't understand, roared trying to stand up, but felt half of his body numb, unable to move. Su Chi's voice came through. It seems this poison hardly affects you, but now that you can't move, that's enough. Although he was speaking, he had already moved into action. Holding an axe that was disproportionately large for his form, he charged at Pig-head man at an extremely fast pace. You wretched little thing. Pig-head man's eyes were split with rage. He hadn't expected Su Chi to be able to swing such a large axe, and with such speed too. And he couldn't move now. He couldn't dodge at all. For this, Su Chi had even activated Return Spring, making everything around him extremely slow during bullet time. Everything was exceedingly swift, catching his opponent off guard. Though Pig-head man was stronger than the other two, he ultimately wasn't enough. Su Chi could take him down without even using a skill. But at that moment, exclamation point, Su Chi's body felt as if it had been swept by a cold wind, his whole body plunging into an ice cave. His eyes widened, a sense of extreme danger approaching like a tiger from the darkness behind the door. Not good. At the height of his composure, under the effect of bullet time, he forcibly stopped his axe. The next moment, puff! A sharp knife had suddenly penetrated Pig Headman's chest, and without any pause, as if a bullet, it rapidly moved towards Su Chi. Su Chi, fixing his gaze on its trajectory, quickly dodged to the side with the assistance of bullet time. Crack! The dagger plunged directly into the ground. Su Chi's gaze intensified. Had he chopped down just now, his own body and Pig Headman's would have been skewered by that long knife. He turned around, his expression cold and piercing as he stared into the darkness. Dean! Pig Headman's face was pale. Disbelief took hold of him, but the next moment his expression dimmed, and he lowered his head. Croc Brother trembled. Are you even sparing your own people? But with this, only one enemy is left. Snake Headman exclaimed excitedly. Yet Su Chi suddenly raised his hand, signaling everyone to be quiet and step back. An old and hoarse voice slowly arose from the darkness. Old age feels somewhat surprised and gratified that you have finally grown up, knowing how to revolt. Su Chi wanted to speak. A few game days could change the population of an orphanage. Using such a tone watching you grow up hardly seems appropriate. The old director coughed a few times, appearing extremely weak. I established this orphanage 10 years ago. Using it as a center, I began to collect the desperate blood of fear, numbness, and unwillingness. I was really helpless because I'm about to die. He slowly stepped forward, his figure revealing under the moonlight. This was an extremely old man, his skin almost sagging off, covered in various grotesque spots. His face was horrific, one of his eyes had gone blind, and his face looked like the bark of a rotting tree, visibly aging and at least 1 foot already in the coffin. Why not just die then? Might have even got a tombstone from the kids 10 years earlier. Su Chi assessed his opponent's strength. That one dagger had already proven that this old man was not simple. Now he understood why Pig Headman's soup had so many medicinal herbs, all for this old man, but he never really cared about him. The old director's murky gaze fixed on Su Chi, showing changes, an odd emotion. Somewhat greedy, slowly returned to calm. He hoarsely said, "But I don't want to die. Every night, seeing your tender bodies, my heart craves for all your flesh and blood, transferring it to me." Su Chi calmly said, "I can understand that. Looking at other people's account balances, I feel the same, but as a being, you've gone too far into abnormality." The old director, sagging skin, moved his dry lips. "You are too young and cannot understand the terror of death and the things the old must still do, but it's not important. Everything is finally complete." At this moment he stepped on a pattern on the ground, and beneath his feet, lines extended from inside the room to the outside, continuously connecting to a well's mouth and then sinking down. A massive amount of blood began to boil. At an astonishing speed, it started flowing towards him. His old, dying body was transforming step by step. The weak heart, too, was slowly but powerfully beating. His voice seemed to change along with it, becoming more forceful and more intimidating. A sound of terror echoed in everyone's ears. "Now old age will make you all a part of me." The horns on the sheep head had patterns flashing. At this moment, Su Chi moved. He had seen enough. Was this old dean trying to use this ritual to live another 500 years? And there was a somewhat familiar aura on the sheep head. It reminded him of unpleasant memories. In any case, definitely not a good thing. This evil ritual and even this sheep-head old man must be related to the evil god invoking it would end everything. And this was a restricted instance. Although the surrounding individuals were said to be abnormal, they were all within the range of ordinary people, and this old guy couldn't be too strong. Moreover, Thunderbolt, a devastating skill, was already prepared. You might not have seen this before, but I just want to say, Su Chi didn't hesitate, kicked hard on the ground, his body swiftly rising, directly attacking the old director. Old director, get ready for bursting coins. Chapter 49. Reunion with an old friend. At this moment, the old director still had his arms spread wide, squinting his eyes and feeling the countless streams of fresh blood pouring into his body, thoroughly enjoying the pleasure of recovery. His dried lips, too, became tinged with color, as his frail and aged body gradually straightened up. Honestly speaking, when he saw Su Qi charge forth from his spot with an expressionless face and muddy, indifferent eyes, he understood that every child in the orphanage was nothing more than a malformed product at best, possessing merely the strength and speed of wild beasts, not worth mentioning. But the next moment, whoosh, a condensed orb of thunder suddenly appeared in Su Qi's hands, accompanied by his movement. A sharp friction sound filled the air. Everyone's eardrums seemed to be caught by the frequency of this volume. Only then did the old director's expression change, his eyes revealing a look of surprise and shock as he saw the thunder orb in Su Qi's palm. What is this thing? It seemed to be something beyond his expectations, but it was already too late to think further. That thing posed a lethal threat to him. The old director wanted to retreat, but Su Qi had already closed in. In a split second, with a loud boom, the thunder orb in Su Qi's hand, traveling at an extremely fast speed, lifted countless bolts of lightning into the air as he threw it directly. Although the sprint was impressively cool, the Su Qi who turned his head to flee was also, without any hesitation, tumbling and scrambling away. Damn it! Who invented this kind of skill with a 5-meter offensive range and a 10-meter explosion radius? Fortunately, he had return spring which granted him bullet time. He leaped away in the blink of an eye, escaping the blast radius. Boom! The thunder orb triggered an explosion, unleashing an astonishing purple thunder. The massive blast reverberated through everyone's eardrums. The old director had no chance to escape, being engulfed at the center of the thunder, emitting a heart-wrenching scream, and the onlookers from the orphanage, already stunned, had never seen such a scene before. Those who knew Su Qi's identity, like the Snakehead Man and others, had eyes full of reverence and an even more determined fervor. Su Qi's gaze fixed on the dust rising from the explosion of thunder, as the entire front door of the house was blown away, showing how immense the power was. He had always thought that those transformations in movies and animations were absurd. Why not strike at its weakness and take its life while it's down? Instead, they had to wait for the villain to reach their final form. Only then would the heroes come to their senses, roaring as they charged forward, dragging out the battle for 10 episodes. Isn't that foolish? But as the dust settled, the old director was blown to pieces. You could see parts of his body scattered all around, bones and flesh everywhere. Even the head was blown off. Dead. They couldn't believe their eyes as they looked at the remains, murmuring, "Is it really dead?" Every person couldn't help but show a wild joy, just about to cheer, only to see Su Qi's figure charging forward again, at an incredibly fast speed, still holding an axe he picked up from the ground. He furiously hacked at the remaining flesh and head. Everyone, hod hod hod. The sound of the axe hitting the ground and Su Qi being splattered with blood on his clothing made everyone's hearts leap in terror. Su Qi paid no attention to the gazes of those around him. The moment he landed, he was already prepared to immediately finish off the job, not giving it any chance to recover. And moreover, the most important thing is, this old director had not died. Su Qi's axe struck the sheep head. It was like chopping on iron. The eyes of the sheep head were even still staring fixedly at Su Qi, his lips just beginning to move, but the axe hesitated not and fell once more. It was the first time in his long life that the old director saw someone who gave no chance to respond, not even a chance to speak. He finally couldn't endure it any longer. "Enough! Stop right there, old man!" he roared in anger. "Stop just because you told me to?" Su Qi bellowed in response, continuing to swing his axe down with full force. This time, the sheep head skull finally showed a crack. "You! Get away!" The old director's spirit shattered, his muddy eyes bursting with terrifying blood vessels. The next moment, runes flashed over the entire sheep head, erupting with a certain power that violently shook Su Qi's axe away. Su Qi was blasted away by this terrifying force. Vitality-20%. His body had suffered an internal injury, and blood flowed from his lips. Su Qi didn't wipe the corner of his mouth, nor did he attend to his vitality. His gaze was coolly fixed on the sheep head. He had already sensed a familiar yet terrifying presence. Various runes on the sheep head flashed wildly as massive amounts of blood poured in from all directions. Su Qi intended to launch another thunderbolt. But he frowned deeply, realizing the blood hadn't flowed into the sheep head, but was instead rushing into the house. At the same time, the ground shook continuously. The fierce wind roared. The night turned red. Terrible screams seemed to tear apart everyone. Everyone in the orphanage was pale, as if about to faint. Boom! The whole house cracked and collapsed, and everyone saw where the blood headed. A black vortex that had formed at the center of the house. Everything around was being sucked in, and those screams were coming from inside. The sheep head's hoarse voice reached everyone's ears. This old one has once had the honor of receiving the true God's gift. Although I have killed many people, I merely intended to become one of them and move on to that world to live forever. The sheep head roared. But after preparing for 10 years, just when success was within reach, you seek to stop me. Its voice, word by word, hoarsely burst from its throat. Then, even in death, I shall drag all of you down with me. Su Qi watched as pale, gigantic tentacles began to extend from the portal. Waves of powerful spiritual impacts surged out wildly. Spiritual power -5. Now at 155. Spiritual power -5. Now at 150. Although Su Qi's spiritual power was not affected by the instance's restrictions, the others, one by one, they had already rolled their eyes and collapsed. The portal is open. Whether it's you, or this city, this world, the sheep head cackled. Tonight, it shall welcome the true strength. From now on, completely turn into hell. Su Qi understood this strength better than the others. It came from pollution. Once pollution stepped into this world, at best it became a doomsday city like the Night Demon. At worst, it would completely collapse, turning into a fully shattered world brimming with evil spirits. This he had also witnessed. In the black vortex, a multitude of tentacles struggled to emerge. Strange phantoms entwined among them. Simply looking could affect the mind, and by the feel of it, it had already surpassed a D-level pollutant. This was the old director, using 10 years, collecting massive amounts of blood filled with despair, fear, and unwillingness to open this death portal. I can only use it one more time. Su Qi's expression was grave. If the last thunderbolt failed to work, he would be out of options. He was just about to move. And at that moment, an accident occurred. From inside the black vortex, countless burning chains were suddenly flung out, and the large tentacles were immediately bound, screaming in agony, struggling, screaming, but to no avail. In the next second, they were pulled back into the black vortex. Su Qi abruptly stopped in his tracks. He looked towards the vortex with a shock, still unaware of what had happened. And the next moment, from the midst of the vortex, a figure slowly took a step out. This figure held a cane in one hand and a top hat in the other, clad in a purple tailcoat, and those chains came from his hat, dragging the tentacles back inside. Then silence. A rare, unpolluted world. The person's voice, calm as he spoke, lightly sounded in everyone's ears, clearly a soliloquy, yet carried an indescribable authority. Let's not toss this trash inside. Su Qi's expression underwent a subtle change. Meanwhile, the sheep head's exclamation mark slowly flickered. Reunited with an old friend. Completed. Chapter 50. The second meeting with the traveling merchant. You? Who are you? The sheep-headed creature stared dumbly at the man before it, unable to comprehend how the horrifying monster that was about to step into this world had suddenly been dragged back. Moreover, as soon as this man appeared, the terrifying aura brought by the black vortex and the faint shrieking as if it were all suppressed. Old evil spirit, I want to see the evil god. Indeed, a sheep-headed one. The traveling merchant looked at the sheep-headed creature, his eyes carrying a mix of undisturbed calm and indifference. It seems the followers of the beast god are truly everywhere. Just a bit of low-quality strength can gather a bunch of disgusting believers. Such stupidity. The traveling merchant slowly put his hat back on and adjusted it before he calmly looked towards the vortex and the blood-filled sky. Sealed in the abyss, trying to gather strength like this to break free from the ceiling. I can't let you succeed. He stretched out his hand. A ripple visible to the naked eye spread from his fingertip. Under the shocked gaze of the sheep-headed old dean, all the shrieking stopped abruptly. The surrounding pollution dissipated in the blink of an eye. The entire vortex channel stopped spinning. The surging blood and patterns around it all collapsed inch by inch. Not only that, the blood reflected in the night also gradually dispersed from the sky. The sheep-headed old dean dumbly watched all this unfold, a look of fear appearing in his murky eyes. Just a light tap of the fingertip. Everything he had accumulated over 10 years was easily shattered. You? Who exactly are you? Its voice trembled as it opened its mouth. The traveling merchant's gaze fell on it, his eyes devoid of any emotion. But in the eyes of the sheep-headed old dean, it was as if he had seen the most terrifying thing. In the reflection of its pupils, flames blazed from the traveling merchant's body as if they were from a demonic god of hell. And only it could see this scene. Just that one glance. The sheep-headed old dean almost went mad. If it had a body now, it would undoubtedly be trembling and raising a finger in panic, crying, "Demon, demon!" The traveling merchant indifferently withdrew his gaze. Such a lowly creature was simply not worth talking to. He looked around. Then his gaze slowly fell on the only one still standing, and the small boy with rabbit ears. The traveling merchant gently spoke. Being able to keep your spirit stable in that channel just now and not be knocked unconscious. Little fellow, you do have some backbone. Su Chi looked strangely. This guy didn't recognize him? Right now he was not only restricted but had also turned into a small boy. However, little fellow, what just happened wasn't for free. The traveling merchant said with a light smile. If I hadn't appeared, you would all have died here, and even your world would gradually crumble. So, little guy, have you thought about it? Is there anything you can give me? Su Chi was silent. Damn profiteer charging even a child. Wasn't it agreed that everything below 1.2 meters was free? He sadly bowed his head. I have nothing now, nothing to give you. If you really want something. Su Chi took a packet of tea leaves from his pocket. This tea was quite tasty. He had casually taken a packet from the Scorpion supervisor before. Although it may not look very valuable, it was left by a very important person before she passed away. In my heart, it is priceless. I've been carrying it since I was little, and I take it out and treasure it when I have nothing else to do. The traveling merchant was somewhat silent. Do you want to drink it? I'll make it for you right now. Although it seems a bit expired, traveling through various worlds as you do, you probably don't mind such a triviality. The traveling merchant narrowed his eyes, staring at the chattering Su Chi, his eyes twinkling faintly. You give me a very strange feeling, like a familiar aura. And how do you know I travel through various worlds? Su Chi blinked innocently. I don't know what you're talking about. The traveling merchant felt increasingly uneasy. Slowly, he took out gold-rimmed glasses from his pocket and put them on. And the moment he did, his gaze gradually changed. First, shock. Then silence. Slowly he said, "It's actually you." He said he had felt a hint of familiarity the moment he saw this guy, but because he was restricted by some force, he hadn't thought much about it. Then, from the moment this guy spoke, that scent became even stronger, involuntarily reminding him of the guy who had tricked him before. Su Chi still maintained his innocence. I don't understand anything. I'm just a child. Enough. The traveling merchant's eyes darkened as he spat out these two words. Then squinting, he regained his calm demeanor. To think that you, a mere mortal, deceived me. I kept sensing that familiarity. He cursed. Damn paradise power. Su Chi also dropped his innocent demeanor, revealing a smile. Respectable traveling merchant, we thought it was a permanent parting, but it seems we meet again. The traveling merchant did not speak, seeing a hint of teasing in Su Chi's eyes, knowing what Su Chi meant because the last time he left, he had clearly stated it was their final meeting. How long had it been? Now the one being teased was him. The traveling merchant silently adjusted his hat. What goes around comes around. Our connection isn't severed yet. I admit I was wrong. There are very few who encounter me a second time. Consider everything just now on the house, no more. Su Chi. Ahem, Su Chi coughed. Don't you want to make a deal with me? According to the procedure, it should be about time. The traveling merchant silently watched Su Chi. I don't feel anything interesting from you. Or are you saying, you want to take out that ancient god's heart and return it to me? That's not it. Su Chi paused. Actually, besides the finger bone my grandfather left, he also wrote down a piece of music. I wonder if you're still interested. The traveling merchant's body shook slightly. Although barely noticeable, Su Chi still perceived it. He remained silent. Saying he wasn't interested would be a lie. With the residual aura from that finger bone, he had found some clues about the old days, but they were merely a hint, not nearly enough progress. But now, there was something similar on Su Chi. But, having been outsmarted by this guy last time as a principled merchant, that was unacceptable. The so-called treasures left by his grandfather, he naturally wouldn't consider anymore. Even if Su Chi demanded a ransom, he would keep the initiative firmly in his hands. Mortal. The traveling merchant spoke calmly, his hands slowly placed on his cane, caressing the pattern on top. What you mentioned isn't much use to me anymore. His gaze was profound, undisturbed. To secure a trade again, it won't be that easy. Su Chi responded with an, oh. Then forget it. He turned and walked away, leaving the traveling merchant standing there, his tailcoat somewhat disheveled in the wind. Chapter 51. Sorry. Traveling merchant. The traveling merchant looked at Su Chi's retreating figure, still standing in the same spot. He had dealt with various great beings before, experienced epic sagas, and witnessed the rise, prosperity, and decline of the myths of old days. Now, he was being led by the nose by a mere mortal. And not for the first time. Mortal. The traveling merchant found himself faltering somewhat, as he actually knew after verifying the contents of that finger bone that such items were indeed helpful to him. Naturally, when he sensed there was another item of similar nature, he was determined to acquire it. He could have let Su Chi demand an exorbitant price, as those things did not hold much value for him. It was just that he had suffered a small loss last time and did not want to let this fellow take the initiative again. But now, he seemed to be moving towards a familiar direction. The traveling merchant watched as Su Chi walked further away, eventually shaking his head helplessly. Fine, the lad has seen right through me. To continue would be meaningless. He moved and appeared in front of Su Chi as if he had teleported. Su Chi, neither servile nor overbearing, blinked and smiled. Respected traveling merchant, do you need anything else? The traveling merchant, watching Su Chi's smile, squinted slightly. When others see me, under the influence of interest or power, everyone is exceedingly respectful, terrified of giving the slightest offense. Only your respect is a cheap adjective. Su Chi. I'll sue you for defamation. The traveling merchant slowly removed his top hat, speaking gently. The most unwise thing a merchant can do is to reveal his bottom price. But now, there's no need to hide it any longer. I indeed need that item. Let's be frank with each other this time and get straight to the point. He gave his hat a slight flick. From within the top hat flowed a dazzling array of items, each encased in some kind of bubble. As soon as they appeared, Their various auras stirred up a fierce wind throughout the orphanage, even more tumultuous than before. A multitude of lights shimmered in the darkness, as if a miracle had manifested. Su Qi paused slightly. What are these? They seem to be on a whole different level than the speaker from last time. The traveling merchant spoke softly. As one of my principles, I never make disproportionately valued trades. I recognize the value of that finger bone, so in my heart, its value has exceeded its original. Therefore, I will offer you a corresponding item. Su Qi gave a thumbs up. Good. Can you make up for the last time, too? No returns or exchanges after sale. The 7-day no-reason return policy doesn't contain this clause. Shut up, the traveling merchant couldn't help but say, his finger slightly hooking, as an item flew down to him. This is an ache stone, with the power to destroy heavens and obliterate the earth. One explosion can annihilate a small town. Su Qi looked over and shook his head. Not satisfied? The traveling merchant snapped his fingers again and a gun wrapped in a blue aura appeared in his hand. This is an atomic energy gun obtained from a high-tech world. Its power may not compare to that stone, but the advantage is that it can be recharged and used continuously. Su Qi shook his head again. This isn't satisfactory either? Just as the traveling merchant was about to continue, Su Qi stopped him. Actually, there's no need to take anything more out for display. The traveling merchant paused, a surprised look on his face. You're not satisfied with any of these? It's not that I'm unsatisfied, but rather I am very tempted, however. Su Qi slowly began. My item slot is restricted right now. I can't take out the item you want. At Su Qi's words, the traveling merchant fell into a prolonged silence, profound and contemplative, though he made no move. But crack, crack, crack. A series of cracking noises came from his hand. Su Qi's eyelids twitched uncontrollably. He quickly looked over. The traveling merchant's face remained expressionless, while the high-tech firearm in his grip cracked open under a powerful force. Goodness me. Su Qi coughed. Calm down. I'm restricted, not unwilling to trade. After all, we're old customers here. It's not decent to attack a customer. The traveling merchant, still without expression. Rest assured, although I'd really like to throw you into that vortex, to experience what pollution hell is like, I'm still very kind.
Sui.
Your grinding teeth tell me you're anything but kind. The traveling merchant took a deep breath, silently stuffed everything back, and donned his high-top hat. It seems we will have a third encounter. But whether by fluke or fate, it shows there's some connection between us. So, tell me. His amber-colored pupils flickered slightly. Your name? He had never asked Su Qi for his name. After all, from his unreachable heights, what he saw and heard was different from others. To him, mortals were just grains of sand, drifting with the wind, existing only briefly. Su Qi paused slightly. Are you collecting customer information? My name is Su Buxian, 21 years old, single, likes to play musical instruments. Enough. The traveling merchant's mouth twitched as he interrupted. A name is enough. He raised his staff and gradually inscribed in the air with it. Mysterious symbols flashed between them, filled with the miraculous. In the end, they transformed into a stream of light that surged into Su Qi's body. Do you have received a breath mark from? Note. He can use this mark to meet you again. Su Qi paused slightly. So the name of the traveling merchant is invisible. It seems to indicate a great disparity in strength between himself and the other party, unable to know any information about him. He didn't ask, though, and if he wanted to know, sooner or later the question marks above his head would tell him. Su Qi thought for a moment, then said, So when do you plan to meet up? The traveling merchant was already immune to this guy's choice of words. Busy with tasks at hand. I'll deal with some matters first and naturally will find you when the time comes. All right then. Su Qi didn't really care. Then I'm off, since the main quest is already complete. He suddenly paused, looking somewhat bewildered at the main quest that was still flickering with light. "What's up?" Su Chi hesitated for a moment. "It seems I haven't actually completed the main quest." The traveling merchant was unfazed by the term main quest, narrowing his eyes with the keen intuition of a businessman. "What is your task? If it's difficult, I can lend a hand, but of course it's not free." Su Chi slowly said, "The task is to find the key and escape from the orphanage." The traveling merchant stared wordlessly at the surrounding destruction. Houses collapsed into ruins, everywhere bearing the marks of a great battle. "You call this escaping? Not important." Su Chi rolled up his sleeves. "What are you doing now?" "Doing the task, of course." The traveling merchant watched, somewhat shocked, as Su Chi rolled up his sleeves, took up an axe, and stood in front of the sheep head. As he fiercely chopped down, he demanded loudly where the key was. He silently looked up into the night. This guy surely was different from the others he had met. Chapter 52 Despicable Person. Under Su Chi's harsh interrogation, the sheep-headed old dean, left with only the head of a sheep, finally spoke out in terror about the location of the key and a series of passwords. Su Chi mused. To think it was placed in a secret compartment with a password. Getting it through the normal game process seems quite difficult. "Old director, is this why you chose to directly overthrow the orphanage?" At this moment, the traveling merchant also came over, his gaze fixed on the sheep-headed old dean. As soon as he appeared, the old dean's fear flared up like a fire, and he began to tremble violently. "Tell me frankly, what's the deal with this sheep head? It's not the first time I've seen it." Su Chi asked, then paused and added, "You're not charging for this piece of information, right?" The traveling merchant didn't respond to the latter part but calmly said, "You can consider it as a totem of some deity. These totems are scattered across countless worlds. When evil thoughts are born and guided by it, a horror descends upon this world." His eyes behind those golden glasses were utterly calm. This guy was originally human, afflicted with a fatal disease. It seems he performed some ritual to survive, turning into this form, and everyone else around, due to the pollution source from the ritual, has turned into monsters. Pollution source again. Su Chi's eyebrows raised. He looked at the group of orphans lying unconscious on the ground around him. They had turned abnormal due to pollution and were abandoned by their families before this old dean brought them to this prison-like orphanage. In many worlds, this happens often. Some are even more tragic, where everyone lives in a completely collapsed, apocalyptic hell. The traveling merchant's gaze shifted as he stared at the old dean. "But I'm more curious about something. Who taught you that ritual?" Upon hearing the traveling merchant's question, the old dean, overwhelmed with fear and not daring to disobey, hurriedly spoke in a trembling and hoarse voice. "It was a group of strange outsiders. They wore different clothes. They said, if I spread the true God's power to this world, I could be liberated and embraced by the true God." That sales pitch sounds familiar. Su Chi's eyes flickered, and he drew a pattern on the ground with a spike. "Do they have tattoos like this on them?" Although the old dean had only half a neck left, he still managed desperately to nod, his murky eyes not yet completely lifeless, making his last excuse. "I just wanted to survive. Even at the end, I only planned to venture alone to that world after successfully transforming myself." Su Chi nodded calmly and swung his axe. "That's well said. But enough talking." However, the traveling merchant stopped him, speaking softly. "I have a question for you. Since you claim to be a follower of the true God and are a pollution source yourself and have used this ritual, it looks like you have had dealings with those things in the abyss. Do you know the word despicable person recently?" The old dean was slightly startled. "No." Bang! The traveling merchant flicked his fingertips slightly, and the entire sheep head suddenly exploded. "What's going on?" Su Chi was surprised as he tried to dodge the exploding flesh, but he worried needlessly. The opponent left not even a trace of flesh or ashes, but turned to dust. Almost all the polluted worlds have been spreading this about. This guy claims to be a follower of the true God, Yet he's completely clueless, the traveling merchant stated calmly. He has no value left. There's no need to waste more time.
Sui.
This old dean's life was too tragically misspent. After 10 years, he hadn't even achieved the basics. Well, not quite, he nearly did before I messed it up. Su Chi asked. Now the question arises. What does despicable person mean? The traveling merchant glanced at him. You are too weak. Such beings are too far removed from you, and curiosity comes at a price. All are almost dealt with. At this moment, a surge of power flowed towards the traveling merchant's staff, and he gently tapped it in the air, opening a pathway as ripples burst forth like waves. He stepped forward through it. The traveling merchant's voice drifted lightly. Anyway, keep growing, little one. Maybe the next time we meet, that thing of yours might have appreciated in value. Su Chi silently watched the traveling merchant disappear amid the chaotic ruins. He shook his head. Why bother playing the riddle man? Despicable person, huh? The name was obviously a code name. The one it referred to must be someone not very aboveboard, and given it was spreading across the polluted worlds, there must be a super big shot involved. He muttered to himself, we will find out eventually. Su Chi didn't just stand there. He had just learned about a hidden compartment in the ruins, and sure enough, there was a mechanical numeric keypad on it. He turned it to open it and then retrieved a key. How much effort it took to get this key, Su Chi said as he left the ruins. The dazed people around him were covering their heads and gradually regaining consciousness. They looked around blankly. Broken walls and devastation everywhere. The terrifying black vortex they had seen earlier had vanished, and the old director was no longer there. What had happened? Was it a success or a failure? As for Su Chi, he emerged from the ruins and looked at the confused crowd. Awake! It seems you still have some potential. Ordinary people, if struck by that spiritual pollution, would not wake up for a day or two. And yet, these folks had only slept for a short while before waking up. The pollution source had left them looking like this, but it had also given them some unusual physical attributes. Brother Su. Pomelo Cat looked at Su Chi and murmured, Did we succeed? Did we win? Su Chi threw the key he held toward them. The main gate key once opened, you can leave the orphanage. Everyone shouted in unison. Some hugged each other with tears streaming down their faces. Others knelt on the ground and cried out, We can finally go home. Pomelo Cat quickly picked up the key, eager to run to the front of the gate. But Su Chi's voice reached their ears. You must understand one thing. Although the source of the terror has been eliminated, its effects are not erased. You weren't sent here on vacation. You were cruelly abandoned, thrown away like monsters. And according to the operation of the pollution source old director over 10 years, this number might not be small. Are you really ready to go back? The crowd stood still, dazed. Having been in this enclosed place for so long, they sometimes forgot some things, but when Su Chi mentioned it, their expressions revealed utterly soulless emotions. Yes, they were still just abandoned orphans. Su Chi glanced at them. The others were wavering, but the snake-head man and his two companions bowed their heads, their eyes thoughtful as they seriously considered the matter. At this moment, the orphanage's main gate had been opened by Pomelo Cat. The despair of the old days had been buried, and a new hope accompanied by hardships was waiting for them ahead. Su Chi watched as the main mission completion prompt and the instance countdown appeared, throwing the non-transferable return spring to Snakehead Man and his group. This might be of some use. Take it. Snakehead Man received it and seemed to realize something. Looking at Su Chi with some astonishment, Sect Hierarch, are you leaving? Su Chi nodded. The next steps are for you to consider on your own. He activated the instance transfer. Immediately after, his body gradually dissipated like particles of light. The crowd stared blankly at the scene, as if witnessing a miracle, and all knelt down. And Snakehead Man, Croc Brother, Spider Boy especially cried out hoarsely, Sect Hierarch. Their voices echoed in the orphanage for a long time. Chapter 53 Settlement and Update. 3 Lunatics. Su Chi returned to his personal login space. Why the hell are you shouting so loudly? It's like you're at a funeral. Player Su Buxian has cleared solo special limitation instance number 978913. Game difficulty: Nightmare. Game rating: 100. Settling rewards: received perfect level dungeon clearing experience points and 3,000 game coins. Eligible for 1 lottery draw. Your level has been raised to 12. Acquired 23 attribute points to distribute. Instance summary: the pitiable lives trapped in the cage land have finally been liberated with your arrival. Although your method deviated from the main storyline, it still concluded well. Regardless of intent, you've spun the wheel of fate and altered their future. 2 levels at once. Su Chi looked at his experience points. Looks like the experience from these special instances is higher than others. Add the nightmare difficulty and solo instance bonuses, and it's not that surprising. Your level has surpassed 10, and the newbie protection mechanism has been disabled. Caution: after level 10, dying within an instance triggers a punishment mechanism, resulting in the loss of experience points and game coins. The higher the level, the greater the punishment cost. This excludes PvP-type instances. Caution: the team instance matchmaking system will no longer differentiate between new players and beta testers. Instance content limitations are lifted, and the balance algorithms adjusted. The death penalty. Upon reading this, Su Chi thought of Sun Xiaohuan and speculated. Could that guy have been kicked out of paradise and forced to start over because of the death penalty? He could control flying knives, but it wasn't due to equipment traits, nor did it seem to be a skill. It was more like a kind of telekinesis talent. I've just lost the newbie protection, so it looks like there's a lot more to explore. Su Chi was looking forward to it. At that moment, a notification from his mailbox suddenly popped up forcefully. Notice: on October 22nd at 12 p.m., the first game update will commence. Please note, matchmaking is now disabled, but this will not affect players currently in instances. The updated version will be 2.0 and is anticipated to take 2 hours. An update. Su Chi paused for a moment, remembering the official announcement that the daily marketplace would go live after the update, along with many other features. The matchmaking interface had already been dimmed, rendered unusable. Su Chi also checked the lottery system. It was the same situation. He couldn't even distribute his attribute points. It seems the personal login space is temporarily suspended, so I can only log off for now. The update time for Abyssal Paradise was not entirely unreasonable. Since the open beta of the game, many players had been sacrificing sleep, steeped in the game round the clock. Some were able to play 4 or even 5 instances within 24 hours. Of course, the game's sleep mode hasn't been launched yet, so players would still feel tired and sleepy upon returning to their personal space, even if they could sleep in instances. Su Chi got out of the gaming pod and checked the time. It was just past 11 o'clock. He paced over and pulled open the curtains. Looks like the weather's nice today. I could go to the market and buy some stuff. The fridge has been empty for a while now. He threw on a coat and headed straight for the market. Su Chi was always good at haggling even before he could see question marks. Now it was even easier. Hey, young man, buy a chicken. Wait, buy what? The chicken vendor offered a sincere smile. Home-raised chicken, grown eating millet. But Su Chi saw, dead from illness, contains medicinal residues. Goodbye. You want 3 pounds of fruit? Yes, exactly 3 pounds. The fruit vendor showed Su Chi the scales display. 1 pound 7 ounces. He immediately put it down and walked away. After a round through the market, Su Chi felt like he was opening blind boxes. He finally managed to buy some stuff and returned home. He took out his phone and sent all the problematic vendors' addresses and reasons to Lu Yishou. Then he forwarded a few videos, every video title deep in thought. Rectification, urgent. Don't let waiting become a regret. They dare to do this now. I can't even imagine what they dare in the future. About 10 seconds later, Lu Yishou replied to the message. Question mark. He slowly said, I hope you haven't forgotten that I'm part of the investigation bureau. This kind of matter should be sent to market supervision. Su Chi forwarded another message. Shocking. After numerous unsuccessful reports, a customer actually went to chop someone. Forget it, I got it. I'll pass it on. Louis Shou was somewhat helpless. After a few seconds, he sent, Did you have any nightmares or something last night? Yes, but it doesn't seem to be a big problem. Su Chi didn't hide anything. That black shadow had already become his servant, serving him tea and water overnight. That's good. But still be careful. Lu Yishou slowly continued. Supernatural phenomena like this are tricky to deal with. You have to rely on yourself, and it will grow day by absorbing the negative emotions of its host. And it's connected to the spiritual attribute. That girl is now focusing on spiritual power and has improved a lot. You've just been entangled with it, and the supernatural entity hasn't grown yet, so there's still time. Okay, I'll be careful. Before, there was no sign of the supernatural happening. Now he also knew that the black shadow could grow by absorbing negative emotions like fear and dread. But being a sunny and optimistic big boy wasn't for nothing. Plus, since it was related to the spiritual attribute, there was even less to worry about. By the way, I have another question. Did you queue up for a game this morning? Louis Shou asked out of the blue. He had to do this because Paradise had no record of Su Chi, so the only option was to ask Su Chi himself. Solo queue, perfect clear. Su Chi didn't hold back. Perfect on hard. Huh? Impressive. Must be at least an 80-point score. Louis Shou felt reassured. With this, he could report back and Su Chi's spot would be secured. Su Chi sent him a question mark in response. What? Did I say it was hard? Ordinary. Thinking downwards, huh? It was nightmare difficulty, score 100. For real. Nightmare 100 points. How did you do that? Louis Shou typed out a string of bewildered characters. Su Chi's message came. Don't ask. As long as you have the skills, it's all that matters. After returning home, Su Chi soaked some dried shiitake mushrooms, cut the bought chicken thighs into pieces, used cooking wine to remove the gamey taste, then poured in some of the water used to soak the mushrooms. In terms of cooking, he felt he was no less skilled than Pighead Man. If it weren't for the conditions at the time not allowing, he felt he could have argued with the guy. An hour later, the aroma of stewed chicken had already wafted out. Su Chi then added chunks of green and red peppers, let them braise for a few minutes, and served the dish. These days, you still have to cook for yourself. While enjoying his lunch, Su Chi opened up his phone. He scrolled through short videos, quickly felt bored, and then opened up a forum. With a slight scroll, he saw a post. Shocking! Abyssal Paradise actually appeared a long time ago. This. Upon opening it, Su Chi saw a photo of an old newspaper. It contained a report on a suicide case where before dying by suicide, the person left a blood-written note on the floor. I should have never entered this abyss. And the date on the newspaper was from 20 years ago. People in the forum thread took it as the original poster playing a prank. After all, the word abyss had many implied meanings. Yet Su Chi examined it closely, but half a minute later, the post suddenly disappeared. Deleting the post? The power from the officials. If there is indeed a connection, then the underlying scope is not small. And this part of the content can only be understood after entering that so-called paradise. After finishing his meal, the update and maintenance were about to end. He wasn't in a hurry to go in. After the meal, he took time to wash the dishes and digest, before lying down in the game pod. Let's see what they've updated this time. Chapter 54. Acquiring a divine skill. Neural connection in progress. Connection successful. Welcome player 985211, Su Buxian, to the game. Su Chi's vision gradually brightened. The entire login space seemed a bit different, the most significant change being the return of that familiar voice. He looked toward the sealed windows and doors. Although he couldn't see outside, he could hear a group of abnormal noises whispering and screeching behind the door, as if they wanted to get in, to tear Su Chi into pieces. Still using the same background music for version 2.0. Isn't that a bit slapdash? But as before, it came quickly and disappeared just as fast. Suchi hadn't had the chance to check out the updated content when someone from his friends list sent a message. Brother Su, you're finally online. Yes, Ho seemed to have been online waiting for him. Duo Q? Team instances now have lifted the newbie restrictions, increased experience and game coin gains, and the MVP of each match gets an extra 30%. And, yes, Ho added, there seems to be new content. You know so much? Saw it on the forum. Don't rush. I'm still looking at the updated content. Okay, I'll wait for you. Suchi closed the chat and reviewed the new content. First, the club system was updated. It was only online for a short while, but astonishingly required level 15 and 100,000 game coins to establish. Although the number of clubs that made it onto the list wasn't large, each one was probably not that simple. A solo player can't hope to reach level 15 and have 100,000 game coins in such a short time, he thought. Suchi skimmed over the club content, then turned his attention to the daily store. Daily store is now open. Attention! Daily store refreshes at midnight. Each refresh only offers 3 items. Attention! Once purchased, items are non-refundable. Any issues, please contact the seller directly. Attention! Players can consign their own items to the store system. A processing fee will be charged based on the item's value. After reviewing these notices, the daily store successfully opened, refreshing and presenting 3 items. Peach Blossom Peanut Milk quickly restores 300 physical strength points in instances, priced at 1,000 game coins, from an anonymous player. Not a bad potion, just a tad expensive, but Suchi elected to purchase it anyway. The importance of physical strength in the game goes without saying. He shifted his gaze downward. Pretty Crystal, a specialty from home, shines continuously, only supports item exchange from a seller in a certain instance. Suchi raised an eyebrow. So there are sellers from the instance world in this store? Interesting, but this item seemed to have no use. His eyes moved to the last item, and they slightly shook. Let's die together. Skill player expends all physical strength to perform a self-destruction. Power is based on the consumed physical strength, and the player will also suffer explosion damage, priced at 7,500 game coins, from player number 2383790. A self-destruction skill? The moment Suchi saw the skill, he immediately purchased it. To think it's only 7,500 game coins. He was surprised it was so cheap, but he could understand why. It looks like it's mainly because of the punishment mechanism. Each use is suicidal, not only losing experience and game coins, but also deeming the entire instance a failure, totally useless. However, Suchi's tone shifted, his eyes gleaming. In my hands, it becomes a divine skill. He possessed a Srilon badge, which could negate an attack that would cause direct damage to his vitality once in every instance. This was like having a super bomb on hand. And, the most critical point, its power could grow with added physical strength. This attribute was the reason it could be called a divine skill. Dear player, let me say thank you. Suchi slotted it into the 3rd slot on his skill bar, the one he had gained upon reaching level 10. Now, at last, it had been filled. He then proceeded to draw loot. The loot pool had been updated, too. Additional game coins, experience, special items, and more were added. However, this time there was nothing of interest, just an ordinary small knife that added 5 points to strength. It seems the skill I just drew has used up all my luck, he mused. Suchi promptly put it up for sale in the daily store for 100 game coins, leaving it to fate to find the right buyer. Then, Suchi allocated 23 attribute points, assigning 13 to vitality and the rest split between strength and movement technique. Vitality, 530. Strength, 25. Movement technique, 25. Physical strength, 53. Spiritual power, 229. Spiritual power. It's growing like I've got a cheat. Suchi could only thank Brother Evil God with gratitude. The significance of this attribute was becoming evident. All interactions with pollution sources were impossible without it. Su Chi opened his friend's list to find that Night Watcher was still online, waiting, and he had just connected to voice chat. Only to find that Old Tomato had just come online, too. Night Watcher immediately pulled him into the voice channel. Trio Q.
No.
I can't queue with you guys right now, Old Tomato said somberly, refusing the offer. What's up with that? Night Watcher was taken aback. It's because his level has dropped. Su Chi noticed that Old Tomato's level had changed to 6. What happened? Old Tomato was silent for a moment, then began slowly. Actually, I played all night yesterday, and by dawn I'd reached level 11. Then in the morning, I entered a team instance. Did you fail to clear it? No. Old Tomato's voice wavered slightly with anger. I was ambushed by other players. They were hiding among us the whole time, and just when we were about to complete the main quest, they struck. They didn't care about the mission. They chased us down and attacked us. Old Tomato's voice revealed his frustration as he seemed to recall the incident. They had a strange pattern tattooed on them. It emitted a mental shock. We couldn't resist at all. Once they revealed their true intentions, they ruthlessly slaughtered everyone in the instance. Even a high-level player like Old Tomato had read in his eyes. He had clearly been shaken. Night Watcher fell silent, lost in thought. Meanwhile, Su Chi pondered before asking, "Is it this kind of pattern?" He described it. Old Tomato was shocked. "Yes, that's it. How did you know?" "When we were in Srilan, those murderous outsiders had the same tattoo." Night Watcher spoke with more severity and seriousness in his tone. "I logged in just to warn you guys. Be careful if you come across this group of people," Old Tomato said through clenched teeth. Su Chi didn't argue, sensing the great impact on Old Tomato. "Understood. You rest up. We'll be careful." Old Tomato logged off. Night Watcher didn't rush to start the game, but instead spoke seriously. "Brother Su, please take what Brother Tomato just said seriously. After reaching level 10, there's a chance of encountering." He hesitated, not naming them, but pausing to add, "These evildoers. Be very cautious. If something isn't right, exit the instance sooner rather than later. If you're killed by that group, your experience can be significantly plundered, which is what happened to Brother Tomato. Otherwise, if it was just the normal death penalty, he might not have dropped in level," Night Watcher explained. "Of course, if you manage to kill them, you can plunder them as well and even receive system rewards. But in the early stages, no one has the spiritual attribute or spiritual equipment, so it's impossible to fight against their methods." Night Watcher suddenly realized he had been talking for a while, and Su Chi had not responded. "Brother Su, did you hear all that?" "Aha." Hearing Su Chi's brief answer, Night Watcher couldn't help but press on. "Brother Su, I'm not joking here. Don't worry, I'm on it." Su Chi's tone remained even as he looked at his spiritual power attribute. "Do I look like someone who does whatever he wants and ignores the team?" "Kind of." Chapter 55. Entering the team instance. Sudden accident. Player Su Buxian, level 12. Player Night Guard, level 11. Matching for a difficult team instance in progress. Note: both players' levels have surpassed 10. Team instance restrictions have been lifted. 1. Team instances will increase the probability of triggering worldviews, Paradise exploratory missions. 2. Players will unlock the reputation system, which can be accessed upon entering the instance. 3. Team instance experience and game coin gain adjusted up 10%. The system will allocate based on players' performances within the instance and will announce the MVP upon main storyline completion. The MVP player will receive an additional 30% experience and game coins and may trigger extra rewards. Previously, after leaving the Novice Protection team matching, it was going to change. Su Chi read these 2 points. Seems interesting. From Night Guard's side, a voice transmitted. The system seems to encourage everyone to explore together and also prevents slacking and passive behavior. As for that reputation system, It should be related to titles. He hadn't finished speaking when it was abruptly cut off. Match successful. Team instance confirmed. Number of players? 8. Entering now. Listening to the cut-off voice, Su Qi also saw darkness surge like a tide, about to drown him. And at that moment, an unexpected event occurred. The darkness abruptly stopped, as if time itself had paused. Question mark. Su Qi raised an eyebrow. If this happened in-game, it's usually termed a lag, typically followed by a crash. But this isn't an ordinary game. That rule doesn't apply here. He already sensed something was wrong. Su Qi asked Night Guard, "Are you still there?" However, there was no response. It seems some force temporarily kept him in personal space, preventing him from immediately entering the instance. Su Qi lifted his head slightly, his gaze subtly shifting toward the sealed window of his personal login space. A massive amount of black fog was spreading outside the room. There stood an eerie figure, seemingly watching him. A strange voice then faintly resounded. Strange because he couldn't tell if it was male or female, nor discern whether it was a monster or a human. It said a sentence. "Su Buxian. Welcome to the Abyss." Su Qi called out, "Buddy, if you have something to say, why not say it clearly instead of talking through walls?" But the other party seemed not to hear him, or perhaps ignored him. In the next moment, the personal space seemed to hit the play button again. Time began to move, and darkness roared forward to swallow Su Qi. "You have entered the team instance." Su Qi didn't bother with the prompt. He was pondering what just had happened. He didn't believe it was just for show. Who was that figure? Why did it suddenly appear and call out his name? What was happening outside the room? He was unclear about all of it. At that moment, beep! A clear mechanical prompt sounded close to Su Qi's ear, carrying a sense of urgency. As he opened his eyes, he discovered he was lying in a narrow space akin to a game pod, a respirator on his face, surrounded by nourishing liquids, next to a red button. Is this a hibernation chamber? Su Qi guessed, having seen so many sci-fi movies. The chamber wasn't transparent and was soundproof, so he was unaware of the outside situation. He decided to put what had just happened out of his mind for the moment. Su Qi reached out to remove the respirator from his face and looked at the conspicuous red button, probably the control switch to open the chamber door. He considered whether or not to press it. Lying here is actually quite comfortable, but from what it seems, staying put won't advance any main lines. And, since it's a team instance, perhaps his teammates are in other hibernation pods as well? Su Qi decisively pressed a button. Beep! Again, the sound of a flute from the beginning, followed by the sound of the cabin door releasing pressure. Su Qi drew out the 100-man slaughter blade, ready to defend himself at any time. When the door finally opened, Su Qi heard all kinds of noisy voices. "Block it! Brother Mo1. Don't let those things in. Watch out! That thing is pouncing. I've got this," a voice shouted. Snap! Damn! Awesome! Truly worthy of a big shot from the first sequence club. That big shot's voice was very calm. "Hurry up and close the door." Outside there was a cacophony of intense fighting sounds and the thunderous noise of a falling door. Meanwhile, Su Qi lay comfortably in the sleeping pod, living in peaceful times. He realized he might have missed something. He silently got up, only to see a group of blood-stained players, panting heavily, then leaning against the closed metal door. "It's too hard. Let's rest and recover some physical strength before thinking about." The talking player suddenly stopped, staring stunned at the sitting Su Qi, and the others looked towards Su Qi too. An odd silence fell in the air. With everyone staring at him, Su Qi felt he should say something at this moment. So he stood up and waved to the people around him. "I'm out of the pod, feeling good. Everyone?" Night Guard couldn't help blurting out, "Damn! Brother Su, you were still in there." A player complained, "The team was one man short right from the start of the 8-person dungeon. I thought you had quit the game. You were just lying in the sleeping pod. Regarding that, I'm very sorry." Su-Chi stepped out from the sleeping pod, wearing a high-tech bodysuit, and said, "I think I need to explain. My home is in a remote village. The internet cable is pulled from the neighboring village, so there's a delay." Night Guard rolled his eyes. "I don't believe that. Plus, who needs a damned internet cable for this game?" Anyway, a middle-aged man holding a firearm with a naive smile said, "Now that we have an extra fighter, that's a good thing." Su-Chi looked at the middle-aged man's ID. "Secretly playing games behind my wife's back. Besides, there were other players he had met offline like Jun Maoan, who nodded indifferently at him. The rest, for people." Night Guard walked over and introduced each one to Su-Chi. The ponytailed female player was Love Eating Jam. The chubby, bespectacled male holding a crossbow was Stain Not Okay. The young man crouching in the corner was panting. His ID was a bit long. "You must return the validation as the following format." Su-Chi couldn't help but take a second look. The young man turned his head. "Don't look at me. I was careless when choosing a name. Who knew I couldn't change it after? Then I'll call you Brother Oat." The last one was about the same age as Su-Chi, already at level 14, named Yoon Jantian. Night Guard said, "Brother Yoon is a key rookie personally groomed by the First Sequence Club. Very strong. If it wasn't for Brother Yoon just now, we probably couldn't have pulled back." Though Yoon Jantian's name sounded domineering, he himself was not arrogant. He smiled. "No worries, we are all a team. Now with this player." He glanced at Su-Chi's ID. "Su Buxian. We just gained an extra chance to break out." Now that Su-Chi had met everyone, he looked at the battle marks by the door and the faint sounds coming from behind the door. "So, what's going on now?" Chapter 56. Familiar Faces? About 2 minutes later, Su-Chi came to understand the whole situation. The team had entered the instance for half an hour now, and after emerging from the hibernation pods at the spawn point, they realized they were likely on a spaceship currently in voyage. And soon after, they received the main mission, but only a short distance from this place, they encountered a monster attack. Hence, the team was forced to retreat back here.
Sui blinked.
The plot seems awfully familiar. However, he didn't expect that, in just the few seconds he was left in his personal space, they had already experienced so much. At this moment, his gaze suddenly shifted, as a script summary began to emerge gradually. "Brother Su, what's wrong with you?" Su-Chi spoke. "Instance introduction is coming." The teammates were taken aback. "You really are lagging." A voice like that of a robot began to speak slowly in Su-Chi's ear, emotionless, as if reading from a script. "This is a spaceship drifting through space. It is very special. Its initial purpose was to head toward its mother star. But things seem not as easy as anticipated. Accidents happened. Abnormal whispers. Panicked mutations. The spaceship is no longer safe. And you are urgently awakened to deal with all of this. Please remember. First, read the employee manual." The robotic voice gradually faded with the jumbled sound quality. A mission also popped up in front of Su-Chi. Main mission. Find the employee manual in room number 7. And the layout of the spaceship's corridors was simply plastered on the wall. Hibernation room. Equals corridor. Equals sad face final control room. But the most important thing was the many rooms alongside the corridor. Their hibernation room was number 10. After leaving, there would be a room every 15 meters along the corridor in sequence, with the final control room being number 0. We were just about to go to room number 7 to find the employee manual. But as soon as we reached Zone 8, from an open door, all sorts of abnormalities rushed out. It was very dangerous. Brother Oat began, he sighed. "We were just killed and forced to return here. Anyway, no need to rush. It was just the first tentative exploration. Now that we know about the existence of those abnormalities, we can slowly formulate an action plan. Currently, if we want to enter room No. 7, we'll have to be a bit blunt, though this carries a sizable risk, and we can't guarantee everyone's survival. So we need to plan every detail well. Escaping pursuit is no simple task, Jun Maoan pondered aloud. As someone experienced in escape room speedruns, he had expertise in this area. His words were coherent and his demeanor calm. At this very moment, someone was observing all this, watching Jun Maoan's analysis. It squinted its eyes slightly. This one is a player proficient in strategy and analysis. And Yoon Jantian, the young man leaning against the wall, smiled and said, I'll go along with you guys. Just call on me when there's fighting. It seems this is a pure combat type player. No panic needed. It's not a big issue, and whatever happens as long as we stand united, we will surely succeed, declared Night Guard loudly. A player who encourages and enhances team cohesion with their social skills? Finally, Night Guard turned to Su Chi. Brother Su, do you have any thoughts? But when he turned around, he found that Su Chi was not by his side. Brother Su. At this moment, Su Chi was standing next to a glass terrarium by a hibernation pod. Looking inside, look, these flowers and plants are quite pretty. The teammates. This person also fell into silence. What kind of player is this? All right, everyone has had enough rest. Let's make a plan of action. Those abnormalities outside have left. Jun Maoan watched the surveillance on the wall. The surveillance footage only covered the corridors from Zone 9 to Zone 7. Their goal was simple. Enter the room in Zone 7 and find the employee manual. After explaining for about a minute, the plan wasn't really that complicated. It was just a matter of division of labor, matching strength, and then striving for as much time as possible. However, Su Chi still stood in front of that glass, then suddenly spoke up. Why didn't you guys check out room number 9? After all, abnormalities surged out from gate number 8. But room number 9 hasn't made any noise at all. The middle-aged man scratched his head. Well, about that we tried, but room number 9 has a password lock, we can't open it, and we didn't find the password here either. Is that so? Su Chi looked at the potted plants. I'm not very certain, but let's proceed with your method first. He left some words unspoken. The hibernation room was only equipped with 8 hibernation pods, and logically, they should have all just woken up half an hour ago. And although the plants in the glass bonsais had a simulated cycling nutrient ecology and didn't need to worry about withering and dying without care, but it was clear that someone had recently pruned these plants. The pruning was very slight, as if someone was performing surgery, utterly precise, down to the last millimeter, not easily noticeable without know-how in gardening. However, Su Chi had question mark, so it was no issue. In any case, besides these players who had just entered the instance, there were others, but this information didn't seem to help advance the main storyline for now, and what's more, Su Chi felt something filthy was watching them, so he chose not to reveal it at this moment. At this moment, the group had made a decision and stood next to the button that would open the metal door. The most important thing is speed. No dawdling. The door to room number 7 is also a metal door, estimated to take 20 seconds to open. Of course, there's no need to fully open it, just enough for us to get through the gap, so we have to hold out for this time. They prepared for the night watch. Let's go. The group rallied once more. Yoon Jantian was already holding his weapon and striding forward. I'll start us off. Su Buxian, you didn't come to listen just now. I'll remind you. Jun Maoan looked at Su Chi. Based on our previous experience, some abnormalities cannot be harmed by physical means. Some are extremely sensitive to sound, and others will emit a spiritual impact, though spiritual power does not get depleted, but it can cause one to become dazed. Su Chi made a gesture. Don't worry, even though it's delayed. I heard it all. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of the heavy metal door activating echoed. The corridor was still silent for the moment. The creatures had all retreated. But nobody dared to let their guard down, because as soon as they reached Zone 8, creatures would rush out from the never-closed gate number 8. Ready. Go. They didn't hesitate at all and immediately sprinted forward. Su Chi followed behind them, glancing at the metal door of Zone 9, then withdrawing his gaze. He quickly entered Zone 8. Gate number 8 was wide open. and the group of monsters inside emitted faint hissing sounds in the dim environment. And just then, Su Qi's expression froze, seemingly spotting something unbelievable among the crowd of creatures. He looked surprised. It seems, there's a familiar figure. Chapter 57. I told you it was someone I knew. The room number 8 was steeped in darkness, the space vast and open. Su Qi's gaze penetrated the interior, where the night vision and physical strength recovery were passive abilities that functioned regardless of conditions, while the strength and movement technique double enhancement needed either darkness or nighttime to activate. However, it seemed as though the concept of night didn't exist in this universe. Utilizing the night vision function of the night demon gene, he saw a dense cluster of abnormalities inside, among which were 2 figures at the very back, that almost made him think he was seeing things. Similar. Too similar. But now was not the time to confirm his suspicions because the monsters by the door had already noticed them and burst into ferocious roars, charging out towards them. They're coming! Everyone's scalp tingled. Be careful! Su Qi also saw what those monsters were like. Winged ones, long-fanged ones, spiked-head ones, various oddly shaped mutants, as if they were not from the same world. But each and every one was not the least bit civil, roaring as they pounced towards them. Jun Maoen's palms slammed down, activating a skill. Get away from me! A barrier appeared in front of the corridor, and the monsters crashed into it. But it didn't hold for even a second before being breached. The distance was only about 10 steps, and they quickly closed in. I'm here! Night Guard ran the fastest. Su Qi only then noticed that this guy was decked out in equipment, gleaming brightly, seemingly having purchased quite a bit offline. He pressed the button to open door number 7, and the metallic doors of room number 7 began rumbling, opening slowly. Good. Hold them off for 10 seconds. Then we can go in. And a vast crowd of dense monsters also reached the front of the group. Crack! Yun Zhantian leaped up, weapon in hand, mercilessly slaughtering all approaching monsters with swift and uncompromised action. Each strike demonstrating his seasoned combat experience, his equipment slightly gleaming. This scene greatly stabilized the minds of everyone engaged in battle. Strong. Brother Yun. Yun Zhantian was about to showcase even more of his combat prowess from the first sequence club, when, hum! A terrifying low droning suddenly vibrated everyone's eardrums, directly penetrating into their minds. Damn! It's a spiritual impact. The countenances of the group shifted to fear, their concentration disrupted, instantly affecting the battle. In the midst of the monster horde, a creature with a horn-shaped head, surrounded by abnormalities, was emitting the spiritual impact. Yun Zhantian's complexion also altered. He was the prime target of the creature, his whole body trembling, his movements clearly slowed down significantly. He was just about to grit his teeth and unleash a skill. Come back here! Su Qi's foot suddenly stomped down on his shoulder, kicking him back. He then relentlessly swung his 100-man slaughter blade, beheading one monster after another that lunged at them. The spiritual impact that put everyone else on high alert didn't affect him in the slightest. This was the confidence that Brother Evil God had given him. It's open. We can go in. Night Guard's axe cleaved through a monster flying down from the ceiling, shouting loudly. The group then entered through the gap that had opened. Yun Zhantian, however, did not move but was instead watching Su Qi, his eyes steady as he clutched a glowing pendant before finally rushing forward without hesitation. I'll help you. Let's go together. His equipment seemed to be able to withstand the spiritual impact. Why the hell didn't you use that earlier? Yun Zhantian was indeed a formidable character. Once free of the mental disturbance, he went all out, fighting 10 at a time. As a newbie with a focus on cultivation from the first sequence, he was not to be compared to ordinary players. Although Su Qi wasn't utilizing many enhancements, he was not at a disadvantage. Moreover, his style of combat was completely different from Yun Zhantian's. Simply put, it was brutal. A stab into the eye socket, another knife through the groin. If it roars, just drive it straight through the throat. A fierce attack on 3 fronts. Let's see if the abnormality will continue its ferocity. Yoon Jantian, though engaged in battle, noticed Suchi's fight and his eyelids twitched violently at the sight of the distinctively different combat style. A wave of fear washing over him. Retreat quickly. Jun Maoen's voice came over calmly. We're ready to close the door at any moment. Let's go. Yoon Jantian barked an order, and Suchi moved in a flash. After slaughtering several fearless abominations that rushed them, they finally made it into room number 7. Boom! The metal door fell immediately after, crushing the abominations that were still trying to get inside to pulp. Yoon Jantian gasped for air. Although he could unleash a powerful burst, his physical strength was rapidly depleting and he couldn't keep up. He couldn't help but turn to look at Suchi, only to find him calm as usual, and still finishing off a few of the abominations, now only half of their bodies remaining. The act of delivering the coup de grace was indescribable. The group watched Suchi's actions and couldn't help but swallow nervously. That was just a lump of mush now, and you're still stabbing and chopping? Guojiang, as a female player, had already turned pale and covered her eyes. Too cruel! Brother Oat couldn't help but whisper to the Night Watch. You guys should be duo partners, right? Has this brother experienced something unpleasant or oppressive in reality? Or does he work in some kind of dangerous profession? The Night Watch fell into silence, only to raise his head and firmly interject. I have no contact with this player named Su Buxian in reality. You know, game friends. After a few meticulous cuts, Suchi tilted his head and looked at everyone, puzzled. Why are you all standing so far away? There's air conditioning over here. It's quite cool. Yoon Jantian couldn't help but say, they're scared by you, Brother Su. He instinctively adopted Night Watch's form of address. What are you doing? Suchi expressed surprise. Finishing off enemies. Can't you tell? Everyone. Suchi spread his hands. Folks, don't look at me like I'm a killing demon. Abnormalities have really strange fatal points. Haven't you all said that some won't die even if their bodies are chopped in half? So, what I'm doing is just normal finishing moves. He pondered for a moment. I suggest that you all do the same later on. All right. Jun Maoen even lost his composure a bit. He had met Suchi offline and hadn't communicated much, and didn't expect him to be crazy in the game. But he also agreed with Suchi's idea of delivering the coup de grace. Let's all search for the Employee Management Handbook now. Room number 7 wasn't very large, so they quickly found a portable tablet. Please note, the Employee Handbook information file requires a password to unlock. Currently accessible information. Zone 8, F-level abominations, 138. E-level abominations, 87. D-level abominations, 2. Note, these 2 D-level abominations are critical cargo, highly powerful and self-aware, having suffered severe trauma to the mind. They're reluctant to talk about it, seemingly terrified even by the mention of their names. Despite this, their threat level remains very high, and it is imperative not to provoke them. The tablet displayed the abominations. One was the split-mouth woman, her body stitched with various threads. The other was the swollen man, with a gigantic lump growing on his back. Everyone's eyelids twitched. It's kind of horrifying. Feels like we'll be torn to shreds if we get too close. Humanoid monsters, and they are D-level, likely extremely dangerous. Suchi's eyes brightened slightly. See, I told you they were familiar faces. Chapter 58, I know this too. Suchi looked at the familiar image and confirmed that it was indeed those 2 people. They were the tenants in Tentacle Man's apartment. His old neighbors. When he and Tentacle Man had left the apartment, they spent several days remodeling them to help him enter the source of collapse. Of course, Suchi was involved and his methods were a bit rough. But how did these 2 guys end up in this instance? On this spaceship? Suchi couldn't help but fall into thought. He also noticed the 2 words in the manual. Cargo. At that moment, finding the Employee Management Manual is complete. Please keep it safe. as it will be key to your survival. Main mission updated. Please connect to the system socket in rooms 5 and 6 for 10 minutes to unlock some archival information. Everyone saw the new main mission. We still don't know what happened to this spaceship or where it's headed, mumbled Jun Maoan. But it looks like all the information is in this tablet, and we must unlock its key information to understand everything. Yisho nodded. As of now, we can only follow the main mission. Everyone prepared to take a rest before setting off. Guojiang was asking if anyone was hurt. Her skill could restore some vitality and physical strength. The middle-aged man was chatting with Brother Oat and another person. The three seemed quite distant from each other, each with a generational gap, creating an oddly awkward atmosphere. Brother Su, did you discover something just then? Yisho approached and asked. He noticed Su Qi's behavior in the hibernation room and, as a former teammate, he felt Su Qi might have sensed something. Su Qi spoke indifferently. It's hard to say. I'm afraid of causing team strife. Ah? Yisho was somewhat baffled. Since when have you been so concerned about the team? ? Your surprise is a bit peculiar. Su Qi glanced at the other 6 people. Let me put it this way, I suspect that among the 8 of us, one might not be a player. This time, Yisho was genuinely surprised. Not a player? Why do you say that? Su Qi briefly explained his findings from the hibernation room. Yisho grew wary. That's the case, but who could it be? How would I know? Su Qi said calmly. Each person is a composite of countless pieces of information. Although they highlight key information, sometimes it's not what Su Qi wants. So generally, he refreshes it from time to time. Like with Pig Headman that time, Su Qi waited until the end just to get all the information. As for everyone present, their information looked normal. His suspicions stemmed from the pruned bonsai, just trimmed. It was easy to treat it as key information and display it directly. But I think they all seem normal. Yisho looked over. I haven't spotted any anomalies. Could it be some other presence on the spaceship? All possibilities exist, which is why I haven't mentioned this in public. Firstly, to avoid making everyone suspicious of each other, and secondly, to avoid alarming the potential impersonator. Yisho was somewhat moved. I didn't expect you to trust me so much, Brother Su. Telling only me. Su Qi glanced at him. Above his head? It showed that before entering the game, he had bought a pair of leopard pattern underwear. He patted Yisho on the shoulder. Of course, if someone were pretending, they surely wouldn't pretend to be one of the duo players. Just be careful going forward. Understood. 5 minutes later, the group set off again. This time was much easier. The abnormality of Sector 8 had returned to its room, so they didn't have to pass through the earlier dangerous section. They soon arrived outside the gate of Area 6. The place wasn't large, only 2 pianos, one splattered with blood stains encased in tempered glass, the other seemingly prepared for the players. And they also saw the control panel to the left. We need to connect the tablet for 10 minutes. The group slowly walked over, remaining alert, but nothing happened when they reached the control panel. However, just as they had plugged in the tablet, ding ding, the bloodstained piano suddenly played 2 keys automatically, causing everyone's expressions to change slightly as they felt a spiritual impact. Although they didn't lose spiritual power, the connection between the control panel and the tablet broke. What's going on? Did that piano interrupt us? Jun Maoan reconnected the tablet again, and at the moment of connection, ding, ding, the piano sounded again. This time even more piercing, as if it were filled with emotion, and likewise, the connection between the console and the tablet was severed once more. It has a spirit. Guojiang blinked. And look, those 2 keys are being held down. It seems to be preparing to play. Could it be? It wants someone to play with it? Jun Maoan looked at the second piano and the music scores on it, pondering. Su Qi seemed somewhat interested. It seems it doesn't want us just to retrieve the password. It wants someone to perform a duet with it. I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Yisho sighed. At this moment, Staines suddenly pushed his glasses up and volunteered. Then I'll do it. I've been studying the piano since I was a child, known as Piano Little Fatty, skilled in various high-order pieces. He excitedly took a seat at the other piano. Suchi paused. He had wanted to go, but since someone else was going, he left it to him. He cautioned, "If I'm not wrong, you need to keep up with its rhythm and play for 10 minutes to let us retrieve the password." Suchi paused again. "And you can't miss a single note. Otherwise, the connection will break again." "That's difficult. I regret this." Stain's face stiffened. "Also," Suchi added, "there might be danger." At this statement, the piano keys started to move. Stain quickly focused all his attention on the music sheet, and his hands began to follow along. His piano skills were quite good, evidently honed since childhood. Though there were a few imperfections and panic at the start, he soon caught up with the rhythm. At the same time, everyone hastily reconnected the tablet to the console. The sound of the duet echoed through the room, growing increasingly unsettling and eerie as they listened. "What kind of piece is this? Why does it give a chilling sensation? And it feels more and more abnormal." Suchi looked intently in that direction. "It's starting to convey emotion." The piano sounds continued, growing more intense, like venting, like screaming. From the keys of the blood-stained piano, more blood began to ooze. The listeners grew paler as they listened, and Stain was already sweating profusely. He was almost unable to keep up, and the sound seemed to place him in a terrifying dark room, ready to be devoured at any moment. And at this moment, his fingers trembled, hitting a wrong note. The piano stopped abruptly. Bang! Stain was thrown backward, crashing hard against the wall. Ding! Ding! The blood-stained piano returned to pressing 2 keys, the sound sharper and filled with rage, as if displeased with the recent wrong note. At the same time, the connection between the tablet and the console was severed again. Watching this scene, Yisho swallowed, asking, "So, does anyone else know how to play the piano?" 3 nodded simultaneously. Jun Maoen said gravely, "I started practicing in junior high. I stopped for a while in college, but I can give it a try." Yoon Jantian also said, "I've practiced for a long time. Our club provides comprehensive training. We must master various skills to cope with odd requirements like this in the game." While Guojiang was treating Stain and overheard this, both were surprised. "Your club is that professional? It feels less like playing a game and more like grooming all-round geniuses." Yoon Jantian just smiled without a word. Yisho looked at Suchi. "Didn't expect brother Su to know as well. Did you also start when you were a child?" Suchi nodded. "Sort of. Last month, because of a certain incident, I bought a music score and practiced it a bit." Everyone fell silent. Then Yisho burst out, "Does that even count as knowing how to play?" Chapter 59. Give it a little nursery rhyme shock. Jun Maoen went up first. He sat down at the piano with a serious expression. Then, ding, ding. The trembling sound of the piano began to play incessantly. Jun Maoen's expression was very calm and focused, his gaze constantly fixed on the music score. "Very impressive," said a man with a stained face and a pale complexion. "But he needs to be careful of the spiritual impacts later on." A look of fear appeared on his face. When I played further into the piece, it was as if I could feel the presence of a monster behind me, monitoring my practice expressionlessly. And it was getting closer and closer. That feeling was truly too terrifying. Yoon Jantian spoke up. "It seems that this thing can create illusions." Suchi, however, pondered. "Or perhaps it is really behind you. Have you tried headbutting it?" Meanwhile, the sound from the piano suddenly intensified, and even the cool-headed player Jun Maoen now showed a change in his face, as if he was frightened, and his focus scattered. The sound of the piano shrieked in everyone's eardrums. It was as if the piano tones were sawing through something. And in the next moment, Jun Maoen made a mistake, and his body trembled. Bang! A loud burst, and his entire body was violently thrown back, hitting the wall heavily. Clearly, The force of this blow was greater than the last. Blood leaked from Jun Maoen's mouth, and his eyes were bloodshot. Jun Maoen was helped up by a middle-aged man. He had a bad complexion and said hoarsely, "Gentlemen, this challenge is very difficult. Not only do we have to keep up with the rhythm, but we also have to directly face that terrifying spiritual impact, and the next one might be fatal. Our consecutive mistakes have enraged it greatly." He looked at Yoon Jantian. "Brother Yoon, are you confident?" Yoon Jantian hesitated for a bit, but shook his head. "Although I can play the piano, spiritual power is my weakness. I haven't enhanced it at all. My only spiritual defense equipment can be used only once per instance, and I've already used it." "I'm afraid it's unlikely." Everyone fell silent. Question mark. Su Chi looked at the group of people sighing and lamenting. "Have you all forgotten that there's still one among us who can play the piano? Brother Su, what are you thinking of doing?" Yisho watched as Su Chi slowly walked over. His gaze was as serene as a master's, looking at the piano keys. He slowly opened his mouth, his voice gentle and indifferent. "Learning is a matter of talent. Some people can write research papers before they're 10 years old, some can drive a McLaren right after graduating, and some get promoted to senior levels as soon as they enter a relevant department. The same goes for the piano. I've read about the first case. That paper was written by her dad. The latter one is a rich second generation. The other a powerful official's child. What does this have to do with talent, you jerk?" The man with the stained face became pale and out of breath. "No, there are too many errors. I can't get them all out. That's not important." Su Chi had already adjusted his clothes, making a formal bow in the direction of the blood-stained piano, with etiquette and a smile that seemed fitting for a concert, exceedingly standard. He then slowly sat down. The crowd was somewhat astonished, but no one spoke, afraid of disturbing Su Chi. After all, the moment had come where they had to go through with it. Ding! Ding! The impatient piano sound abruptly started up again, this time even more agitated and filled with a sense of chill. Su Chi stretched out his slender fingers, and the harmonious sound gently flowed from his fingertips. The duet gracefully commenced. Though the piano's tone was abnormal, it was orderly and methodical. "He really knows his stuff," the crowd exclaimed in amazement, thankful that they had connected the tablets and control panels right away, avoiding the kind of blunder only a foolish teammate would make. Su Chi focused intently, his movements relaxed and comfortable, hardly seeming like someone who had just started playing the piano. Stain pushed up his glasses. He needs to be careful now. He's about to enter the main melody. The rhythm and the spiritual impact will both intensify. The music lasted for a long time, about 10 minutes. As it progressed, the blood-stained piano played more intensely, more abnormally. The sound of the piano suddenly moved into a higher order. "Here it comes." Stain and Jun Maoen both stared intently. Having personally experienced it, they understood the difficulty of this section better than anyone else. Su Chi showed no change in expression. He even played more fiercely, as if he was more into it than the other side. The duet seemed to turn into a competition between the two. "Why do I feel like Brother Su even wants to overpower the opponent?" Night Watch murmured. He didn't understand piano or music, but he knew Su Chi. At this moment, on the modeled piano in the middle, blood appeared. Lots of fresh blood seeped out from between the keys. And with the violent press of the keys, the blood splattered out, as if chopping away at flesh and bone. The abnormal phase is starting. Jun Maoen and Stain's complexions changed as they said gravely, "This is where we failed. The spiritual impact will lead us to hallucinate, making us see abnormalities, black shadows. Not sure if Brother Su can shake off the influence." "Wait. Brother Su doesn't seem to have moved at all. He's so steady." And on Su Chi's side, the abnormalities and black shadows indeed appeared one after another around him. But as they attempted to draw close, they trembled and were forcefully suppressed, unable to advance. Su Chi's spiritual power was so high, they were outdated. The so-called stern spiritual impact was just like a breeze passing by, without causing a ripple. 10 minutes finally passed slowly by. During that time, everyone felt several terrifying bursts, but Su Chi caught them all. They weren't performing a duet. They were fighting tooth and nail. And the middle-aged man, looking at the control panel, quickly said, "Success." The tablet had begun to flicker, showing progress. And the piano music started to slow down, entering the finale. Ding! The last note came from the blood-stained piano, its vibrato echoing throughout room 6. It seemed somewhat content, as if to say that Su Chi was quite good and had passed. The crowd's faces lit up with joy as they cheered. "Brother Su, well done. To think you said you only started a month ago, turns out you were joking. Do you want to take a rest before we move on to room 5? But Su Chi didn't stand up. He looked at on top of the blood-stained piano where red characters emerged. "Defeat it, and perhaps you'll get a reward." The just-finished duet was only a mutual contest. After all, the other side had been in control, and it had not been defeated. "Brother Su." The others looked at the unmoving Su Chi with some surprise. Then they saw Su Chi slowly reach into his pocket and take out another piece of sheet music. "You go ahead." It was a tattered piece of sheet music, contaminated material that the traveling merchant needed. It was already so worn and the ink had faded, barely able to make out the lines, which Su Chi had handwritten to record the sound of the past of horror nursery rhyme. Su Chi placed the sheet music on top and softly said, "I'm going to give it a little nursery rhyme shock." Chapter 60 Mixed Fish Piano. Everyone was confused. Yisho, the experienced one, sighed. "Let's just go ahead for now. Brother Su is very much a team player. He must have something else he wants to do, and he'll catch up later." "Okay." Jun Maoan, however, pondered. He might have a special mission after playing the piano. But since we've all failed, let's leave this to him. Everyone nodded in agreement. Yisho silently walked among the crowd, although he said that he was the first to disbelieve it. They activated the door to room 6 and then headed down the corridor. The door fell with a thunderous crash, leaving only Su Chi and the piano opposite him. Su Chi looked at it and it seemed to be watching Su Chi as well. Ding! Ding! The blood-stained piano issued a somewhat provocative note. It was inherently spirited and had already sensed what Su Chi intended to do. "Challenge it? Don't rush. Let's start with a warm-up," he said. Su Chi's fingers touched the piano keys, and he began to play a nursery rhyme classic, the DJ version of Two Tigers. The melody was melodious, spirited and lively. However, this clearly confused the blood-stained piano. At the same time, it also made the people who hadn't gone far exchange puzzled looks. "Yisho, are you really sure he's doing something serious?" "Yisho." He strode forward. "I know nothing." Although the blood-stained piano was confused, a nursery rhyme was just a nursery rhyme, a DJ was a DJ. What if the rhythm was merry? It didn't need any music score and followed the tune directly, without missing a beat. Su Chi judged the piano's speed. Such a rapid imitation suggested that defeating it would indeed be extremely difficult. The song concluded. The blood-stained piano let out a trembling note, as if to say, "That's it? That's all? Don't be impatient. That was just a warm-up," said Su Chi with a smile. "Now for the main event. I have a nursery rhyme that's quite ancient, from the sound of the past. I wonder if you can withstand it." Ding! The blood-stained piano was defiant. "All right." Su Chi withdrew his gaze, looking at the music score he had brought out. The sound system given by the traveling merchant contained the horror nursery rhyme from the sound of the past. The sound was not simple. The sound system was probably just a restrictive shell. He wrote it down, not to study it but to prepare to inquire about it when handing it over to the traveling merchant. The blood-stained piano seemed to notice Su Chi was pondering and impatiently emitted a sound. "Ding! Ding! Aren't you challenging me? Come on, then." Su Chi laughed. His hand touched the piano keys and gently pressed down. You think you can copy the background music designated by the leader of the Hustler sect? The sound of the past vibrated under Su Chi's fingers. The melody was rising. The fifth note started. It was different. A strange aura began to spread, as if the temperature of the air around was dropping. The blood-stained piano was visibly stunned, slowing considerably. Is this a nursery rhyme? Is this a children's tune? Only a child-eating monster would listen to this. And why did it feel a shiver? The blood-stained piano was still following, seemingly wanting to face it head-on. But the trend did not stop. Su Chi's fingers moved swiftly. Horror, strangeness, and screams. They were pervading the space, like a rising tide. And everything seemed to have only just begun. Su Chi sat there, his expression unchanged. All the horror was generated between his fingertips. Boom! The entire room visibly darkened. The blood-stained piano was completely dumbfounded. The piano keys seized up, not daring to continue. Even the body of the piano was trembling, as blood continually gushed from within the keys, beyond its control. Fear. Fear had actually invaded such a contaminant. It became aware of endless abnormalities. It sensed that all space centered around Su Chi was fracturing. Roars were coming from everywhere, along with boundless darkness as if they were approaching from all sides. Then erupted burst. It trembled crazily, as if it would be erased the next moment. And just at that time, clang! Su Chi withdrew his hand, and all sounds abruptly ceased. All the scenes from just a moment ago vanished as if they were hallucinations, as if nothing had ever happened. After stopping, Su Chi himself appeared somewhat dazed, muttering to himself, I played less than 1/10 of Sound of the Past, and directly lost 100 units of spiritual power. And Su Chi turned to look at the blood-stained piano. All its keys were trembling non-stop. The friction of the keys sounded like screams, and blood continued to spray everywhere from between the keys. It's getting a bit too much for children. Su Chi walked up to it. The other party seemed to have no response at all, still performing an endless blood spray. Does this count as defeating it? Su Chi held the 100-man slaughter blade in his hand. If not, then I'll have to defeat it on a physical level. And at that moment, driven by a desire to survive, the blood-stained piano seemed to come back to life. The music scores on it changed, revealing inscriptions. Please, don't erase me. Damn it, I shouldn't have contended with you. I was wrong. I can do anything. Just don't use that terrifying sound again. The twisted inscriptions that continuously appeared showed it was indeed incredibly frightened, constantly begging for mercy. However, Su Chi did not see the finishing exclamation mark. It seemed that, at least in terms of piano playing, it still thought it wasn't defeated. Then you, Su Chi paused, carve these words onto your piano. The blood-stained piano. Half a minute later, on a conspicuous part of its piano, deep carvings were made. Once dared to compete with the sect hierarch of the Hustlers sect, yet was not a match mixed fish piano. And Su Chi saw the exclamation mark slowly disappear. A sphere of light fell from within the music signature. A skill? Su Chi grasped it, and a panel appeared before his eyes. Name: Artificial Teams Counterattack. Type: Skill. Function: possesses a 50% chance to cause mechanical, electronic, equipment, and other such items to malfunction on their next usage. If the equipment quality is higher than ordinary, then the success rate decreases to 10%, 5%, 1% progressively. Each use requires a 10-minute cooldown. Consumption: 100 units of physical strength. Note: let's see how the mechanical team performs now. Hehehe. Su Chi looked at the skill, his gaze shifted slightly. Equipment has 6 levels. Low quality, ordinary, excellent, perfect, immortal, and legendary. That meant it had a 50% chance of causing ordinary and lower items to malfunction, and a 10% chance for excellent quality goods, while flawless items had a 5% probability. It could even affect immortal equipment, though the success rate was only 1%. But the most important thing was, this skill could be used over and over. Not a bad skill. Su Chi was very satisfied with it. He looked again at the piano. Oh right, the first song I played. You practice it well. No matter where you get shipped to afterward, you can proudly play it and say it was taught to you by the sect hierarch of the Hustlers sect. Remember to carry on the legacy. The blood-stained piano remained dazed for a long time. And at this moment, in room 5, the people at the door had finally overcome that hurdle, unlocking the information that was blocked on the tablet. Phew! Luckily, it's a direct combat pollution abnormality, which is much easier than room 6. Jun Maoan and others gasped for air, having just been through a battle. Brother Su hasn't arrived yet, but let's check it out first. The content on the tablet appeared before everyone's eyes, but it was flashing with alarming red lights. Everyone's eyes tightened. Please be careful. The LHS-87 model robot is a high-IQ AI robot capable of perfectly simulating another person's appearance, voice, and behavior. It was originally used to manage and monitor the ship's various cargo after personnel went into hibernation, but it is now influenced by something and has developed a dangerous autonomous consciousness. Caution! Ship personnel, it may be among you.